The daily grind can be soul-crushing. For Yoshimura Keigo, it was a slow-motion car crash he had to endure every single day. But today, that metaphor was about to become terrifyingly literal. Our story begins with Yoshimura, a 28-year-old researcher, stuck in a car and an even more miserable phone call. He's getting an earful from his boss, a man who seems to specialize in blame shifting. A deal went south, and even though the manual was unclear, Yoshimura is the one taking all the heat. His boss chews him out, threatening his salary and bonus over a mistake that wasn't even his. Yoshimura can only grit his teeth and apologize, wondering how spineless yes-men like his boss are the ones who climb the corporate ladder. The thought of going back to the office makes him feel sick. He just wants out. As he's stewing in his misery, a news report flashes on his car's display. A medium-depth dungeon in America has finally been conquered. It's been 3 years since these strange portals to other worlds first appeared, and humanity is still just scratching the surface. The reporters are buzzing about a rare skill orb found on the final floor. For a moment, Yoshimura lets himself dream. Maybe a little adventure is just what he needs to escape his pathetic life. In this new world, dungeons offer 3 main treasures. First, when you defeat a monster for the first time, it drops a dungeon card, or D card, which registers you as an explorer. Then there are potions, miracle elixirs discovered by accident when one was poured on a dying soldier, saving him from certain death. But the ultimate prize is the skill orb. These rare artifacts can grant a person supernatural abilities, turning fantasy into reality. Of course, for a regular guy like Yoshimura, getting one is just a daydream. They're not exactly handed out to the general public. That's when his car begins to violently shake. Before he can react, a wheel flies off, and the car spins out of control with a horrifying screech of metal. He slams on the brakes, but not before seeing a small figure in the road. His heart plummets. It looked like a child. A massive truck, which had been right behind him, swerves and screeches to a halt, narrowly avoiding a pileup. Shaking, Yoshimura scrambles out of his car, his mind racing. He calls out, "Hey, are you okay?" But the figure that turns to face him is no child. It's a pale, grotesque creature with pointed ears and dead eyes. A goblin. Before he can even process the impossible sight, the goblin's body dissolves into a cloud of black particles, leaving behind a single, sleek black card. He picks it up. It's a D card, and it has his name on it, Yoshimura Keigo. It also shows his area and a rank. But the number is astronomical, something in the tens of millions. He has no clue what it means, but frankly, he doesn't care. All he can feel is overwhelming relief. He didn't hit a child. He collapses against his car, his legs turning to jelly. But his nightmare is far from over. The ground begins to rumble violently. A massive crack splits the earth open right in front of him. The truck that nearly hit him slides helplessly into the newly formed chasm, getting impaled on a forest of steel rebar from a nearby construction site. Yoshimura watches in horror, realizing he could have been next. Then, the ground beneath his own feet gives way, and he's sent plummeting into the abyss. As he falls, a strange word echoes in his mind: retreat. His heart feels like it's going to explode out of his chest, and, in the darkness, a brilliant, glowing sphere materializes before him. He recognizes it instantly from the news. A skill orb. Even while falling to his death, his analytical mind is working. Based on the time it took for the rebar to fall, he calculates the depth of this hole to be over 1 kilometer. Meanwhile, at the Japan Dungeon Association, alarms are blaring. They've detected a massive energy signature. A new dungeon has just appeared in the middle of Tokyo, and its depth is off the charts, over 1,400 meters, a new world record. They scramble to issue warnings and evacuate the area. But just as the chaos hits its peak, an operator calls out in disbelief. The dungeon, it's gone. It vanished less than an hour after it appeared. Back at the dungeon, Yoshimura is somehow safe, clutching the skill orb as he gets back in his now drivable car. Later that night, back in the safety of his rundown apartment, he examines his prize. He wonders what a skill orb is even worth. He notices a number etched into its surface, 0074. The skill itself is called making. A quick search online reveals that the number is a countdown timer. The orb will disappear once the counter reaches 1:36. This ticking clock, along with the fact that you need a D card to even use one, makes them incredibly difficult to trade. All official sales have to go through the JDA. Hopeful, he searches the JDA database for the skill making, only to find 0 results. It's an unknown skill. His dreams of selling it for a fortune and quitting his job instantly evaporate. Well, if he can't sell it, there's only one thing left to do. With a dramatic flair born of desperation, he declares, "I'm not going to be human anymore," and absorbs the orb. Digital light and code swirl around him. He feels a bizarre sensation. as if his entire body is being deconstructed and then reassembled. But when the light fades, he feels absolutely no different. He frantically searches online for how to use his new skill, but the only advice he finds is a vague, "You'll know somehow." He tries everything he can think of, but nothing works. Then, he remembers the D card. He pulls it out and his eyes go wide. The skill making is now listed on it. But that's not what shocks him. His rank, that impossibly high number from before, has changed. It now reads, Rank 1. Unbeknownst to him, the entire world of dungeon explorers is in an uproar. The global rankings have been shattered. An anonymous explorer from Area 12 Japan has just claimed the #1 spot, knocking the legendary Russian hero from his throne. Analysts are scrambling, calling this mysterious newcomer a comet, who appeared out of nowhere. The next morning, Yoshimura is just salaryman running late for work. Having overslept after a long night of web surfing, he chalks up the rank 1 thing to a weird dream. But back in his apartment, the reality of the card sinks in. He realizes the astronomical score must have come from the falling rebar. The system must have counted each one as a monster defeated. But does that mean he's actually strong? He tries to crush his doorknob to test his new power, and fails miserably. He feels completely normal. He arrives at the office, still completely baffled, only to be immediately intercepted by his tyrannical boss, Inoki. Conference room. Now, he grunts. As he's led away like a man on death row, his junior colleague, Miyoshi, watches with concern. Over lunch, a dejected Yoshimura tells Miyoshi he's finally had enough. He's quitting. She tries to be the voice of reason, reminding him that he's too young to throw his career away for a few months of unemployment benefits. When she asks what he'll do, he blurts out the first thing that comes to mind. I'm thinking of dungeon diving. Miyoshi is stunned. She always saw him as a nerdy, brains over brawn kind of guy. Trying to salvage his pride, he decides to show her something that will change her mind. After making her swear to secrecy, he slides his D card across the table. Her eyes scan the card, land on rank 1, and she lets out a shriek that echoes through the entire cafe. She immediately accuses him of showing her a fake, but he insists it's real. Skeptical, she pulls up the official World Dungeon ranking list on her phone. Her jaw drops. The #1 spot, an anonymous explorer from Area 12, it's him. She can't believe it. How could her nerdy senior be ranked higher than the world's most elite soldiers? He admits he doesn't even know how to use his skill. Making. Miyoshi tells him she once saw someone activate a skill by holding their card, touching the skill's name, and saying it out loud. Yoshimura prepares to try it, feeling like an absolute chuny, before Miyoshi wisely points out that activating an unknown, potentially destructive skill in a crowded cafe is a terrible idea. Her mind is already racing with the possibilities. As the top-ranked explorer, he could make an insane amount of money, becoming a global celebrity. The internet is already going wild over his sudden appearance at the top of the charts. An independent taking the top spot is unheard of in Japan, where high rankers are almost exclusively military. Suddenly, her eyes light up with a brilliant idea. If you quit your job, she says with a grin, you could hire me. She explains that to sell dungeon items, he'll need a commercial license from the JDA. If she gets the license in her name and acts as his agent, she'll be the public face of his operation, protecting his anonymity. He asks what she gets out of it, and she just winks, sparkling with excitement. I'm just excited to start working with you, senpai. In that moment, Yoshimura realizes he's been completely outplayed. This girl is a born salesperson, and he's just become her #1 product. Our story picks up with Yoshimura and Miyoshi seated at a cafe, planning their next move. After his shocking discovery, the question isn't what he has but how to profit from it without winding up in a government lab. Miyoshi, ever the pragmatist, lays out the risks. The world and Japan dungeon associations control everything. Selling dungeon goods is strictly regulated, and any direct sale would leave a paper trail leading right back to him. However, she explains, if the buyer is anonymous, the trail goes cold. Common sense, really. The less the authorities know, the better. Yoshimura nods, absorbing the information. He's glad he doesn't have to handle the shady side of things himself, but as he processes this, Miyoshi's eyes widen with a sudden realization. Wait a minute, she says, you can't go into a dungeon. You have to register as an explorer and take a course. Yoshimura looks confused. But I already have a D card. I sort of defeated a stray goblin. The phrase stray goblin hangs in the air. Miyoshi stares at him baffled. Goblins don't just wander around alleys. What is he even talking about? Seeing her suspicion, he quickly backpedals, promising to explain later. She reluctantly agrees, but her look says it all. She's not letting this go. Meanwhile, miles away at the JDA headquarters, an alert flashes on a screen. An analyst in the skills database management team notices an unusual search. Someone looked up the skill maker. His colleague points out that single skill searches are rare. Usually, people are just browsing out of curiosity. A targeted search like this is different. It's enough to raise a flag. Put a watch on the target skill for now, the senior analyst orders. If someone registers it on their D card, we'll know immediately. Unbeknownst to Yoshimura, the system is already closing in on him. Later that evening, Yoshimura finds himself sitting alone on a park bench, the city lights glowing in the distance. He stares intently at his D card, muttering the name of his skill over and over. Making, he can't shake the feeling that he looks ridiculous, a grown man talking to a plastic card. He hears a faint giggle from a passing couple and flushes with embarrassment. Focus, he tells himself, trying to block out the distraction. He repeats the word one last time. It's late and cold, so thankfully, the park is mostly empty. And then it happens. A brilliant light shines from the card. A holographic screen, looking like something straight out of a classic RPG, materializes in the air before him. It displays his name, rank, and a detailed list of his attribute, HP, strength, vitality. It's all there. The sudden appearance of the interface spooks him, causing him to jump up with a clatter. A woman walking by gives him a strange look, but her eyes pass right through the screen. He breathes a sigh of relief. It's only visible to him. He walks through the bustling city streets, the glowing stat screen floating faithfully in front of him, completely invisible to the crowds. It doesn't seem to have any physical presence, which is a good thing. A realization dawns on him. Making wasn't about crafting items. It was making a character. His skill was a character creation screen for reality itself. He notices the small plus buttons next to each stat. It clicks. He can allocate points to make himself stronger. He deduces that the stat points, or SP, must come defeating monsters. This explains everything. And the most crucial part? It was a common skill, the internet would be flooded with information about it. The fact that it's not means his ability is unique. It's a secret that only he knows. The inner researcher in him is practically buzzing with excitement. This is a revolutionary discovery. He rushes home, knowing he can't draw any conclusions without proper testing. He spends hours under the warm light of his kotatsu, meticulously adding 1 point at a time to different stats and documenting the changes. He reverse engineers the system, figuring out the exact formulas that convert his attributes into raw HP and MP. It's incredible. The abstract concept of human ability, reduced to simple numbers. A grin spreads across his face. If his strength was originally 9 and he pumped it full of points, would he become 10 times more powerful? The possibilities are endless. But to test the real-world effects, he needs specialized equipment. And then he remembers Miyoshi mentioned her senior runs a medical research company. He glances at the clock. It's late, but tomorrow is Saturday. He pulls out his phone and dials her number. The next day, Miyoshi arrives at his apartment. She's dressed to the nines, looking ready for a fancy dinner. Yoshimura is taken aback. Is something going on today? She reminds him that he promised to treat her to dinner at an expensive restaurant called Mall Isle. He facepalms. He was joking. Now he just looks like an idiot. He quickly makes a reservation online while Miyoshi celebrates her victory. Putting the dinner fiasco aside, he gets down to business. I think I figured it out, he says, handing her his notebook filled with data. She studies his handwritten charts and equations. Senpai, are these numerical representations of your abilities? He confirms it, and her mind immediately jumps to the correct conclusion. Does your making skill let you visualize your stats? He plays it cool, but yeah, that's the gist of it. She's stunned, rightly pointing out that this kind of information could be a national secret. He nervously confirms her suspicions. He shows her the simple, junior high-level formulas he's worked out. But as she looks at the numbers, a flash of insight crosses her face. This is just about him. This factor system, she says, her voice filled with awe, is going to change what the world understands about skill orbs. She immediately gets on her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She explains that she's been researching lost orbs with unknown or poorly understood effects. She pulls up an online marketplace and sorts by price, showing him orbs that grant tiny, almost imperceptible bonuses, like JX1 or STX2. Nobody knew what these meant. But with his ability to see the underlying numbers, they could finally decipher the code. Miyoshi's excitement is contagious. Quantification is amazing, she cheers. These lost orbs are relatively cheap now, but that's only because no one knows their true value. The moment this information becomes public, their prices will explode. She points to his data, then back to the screen. If you can measure this, it's going to be worth an incredible amount of money. Yoshimura looks at her, his expression hardening with determination. I think so too. Miyoshi paints a vivid picture of the future. Governments, corporations, and powerful explorers all competing for this groundbreaking knowledge. As expected from a good salesperson, he remarks. She smiles. Actually, that's the reason I called you here. Tell me more. He leans in, ready to listen. The next scene opens with a woman named Midori, who's just received an email from Miyoshi about a visit. It seems their plan is already in motion. we see Yoshimura explaining the situation to Midori, and so begins the next chapter of their venture. Back in his apartment, Yoshimura is explaining the core function of his skill to Miyoshi. He can literally increase his own attributes. Their plan is to use Midori's equipment to get comprehensive measurements while he adjusts his stats, essentially making him a human research subject. The problem is, they don't even know what to measure first. Miyoshi, ever the analyst, raises a critical point. Consider this, she says. Assuming that increasing strength causes a measurable physiological change, how does your body not break down? If his strength doubles but his muscle mass stays the same, it defies physics. There must be some other dungeon-related change happening. They agree to take it slow, increasing his stats little by little. The conversation then turns to patents. If they can develop an instrument to measure these changes, they could be set for life. We'll be named on the patent together, she says with a confident smile. On a rainy Sunday, the two of them head to Ichigaya Station. Miyoshi is accompanying him to his Explorer license course. She comments on the strange look of the JDA building. Then, she drops a financial bomb. Midori's preliminary tests are going to cost 60 million yen. Yoshimura freezes. That's an impossible amount of money. A bank would never give him a loan for something so speculative. Finding an investor without concrete proof is just as unlikely. He comes to a stark conclusion. There's only one way to make that kind of cash quickly. The dungeon. They arrive at the JDA building. The joy and excitement of being researchers momentarily forgotten. Yoshimura heads to the front desk to apply for his license. The process is straightforward. Take the course, undergo a review, and the license will be mailed. The review is just a basic background check for criminal records or chronic illnesses. When she asks for his D card, he presents it. This simplifies things, allowing him to apply for a higher-ranked license from the start. The receptionist explains the WDA license card, a system that runs from G rank for beginners all the way up to S rank for the elite. This rank, not the D card rank, determines what gear you can buy and what dungeons you can enter. It's a system designed for control and safety. The D card, she explains, is more of a mysterious personnel management tool. Its true function isn't well understood. Yoshimura enters the main conference room for his course. As the instructor begins, he overhears two women next to him discussing the fees. On top of a 10% dungeon tax, there's a 10% DDA administration fee. It's treated like gambling, but the stakes are your life, one of them says. Yoshimura dryly mutters that the tax rate is almost as high as horse racing. Next to him, Miyoshi lets out a small laugh. The two women turn, surprised. Miyoshi, covering her mouth, apologizes. It was just so cool, she explains. This kicks off an awkward but friendly conversation. The woman introduces herself as Mitsurugi and her friend as Saito. Saito playfully asks if they're on a dungeon date. Yoshimura clarifies he's here for research, which piques Mitsurugi's interest. Then please tell me all about dungeons next time, she says, clearly flirting. He agrees with a simple, yeah sure, completely missing the social cue. He doesn't offer his business card or ask for hers, leaving Mitsurugi a bit confused and him wondering if he did something wrong. The man is hopeless at reading the room. After the course ends, he and Miyoshi head out for lunch. His stomach is growling. He hasn't eaten since yesterday. They end up at a small noodle shop. Over beer and wontons, they discuss the women from class. He can't figure out why they'd be interested in him, guessing they're in the entertainment or fashion industry. He scoffs at the idea of dungeon idols, seeing it as a shady business. Miyoshi, however, breaks it down with cold business logic. It's a win-win transaction that satisfies both parties. Yoshimura is reluctantly convinced by her argument. Joking aside, he asks if she really thinks there's a link between dungeons and industries like entertainment. I think there is, she says seriously, because of the status you showed me. She explains that optimizing behavior requires more than just raw stats. Increasing agility likely improves reflexes. Improving dexterity would logically enhance range of motion and body control. Dungeon enhancements aren't just about making muscles bigger. They allow people to surpass their natural physical limits. That's why professional athletes and even fashion models would pay a fortune for it. It all makes sense now. With the course finally completed, Yoshimura's path is clear. His next stop, the Yoyogi dungeon. Right, with his new dungeon card in hand, Yoshimura and his partner Miyoshi are ready to start their new lives as explorers. Their destination, the Yoyogi dungeon. A new chapter begins. Of course, a decision this big doesn't come without some baggage. Yoshimura flashes back to the day he quit his soul-crushing office job. His bosses were absolutely livid, trying to guilt-trip him about how his departure would doom their projects. But he didn't care. He was done cleaning up their messes and taking the blame for their incompetence. In the end, they accepted his resignation, holding it off just long enough to pay him his final salary. He was finally free. And so, with the shackles of corporate life broken, he stepped into his very first dungeon. Miyoshi, ever the planner, lays out the situation. Since this is his first time, they should probably stick to the first level to get their bearings. It's a bit unusual though. She explains that the stairs to the second level are right near the entrance, so most explorers just skip the first floor entirely and head straight down. The reason they skip it? The main monster on this level is the humble, jiggly slime, and frankly, nobody likes them. They're tough to kill, give almost no experience, and drop absolutely nothing of value. Miyoshi confirms that most people just ignore them in favor of the goblins on the next floor. But she has a different idea. She wants to test something on these slimes, and Yoshimura, trusting her expertise, agrees. So, while the main flow of traffic heads deeper into the dungeon, our duo ventures into the forgotten first level. Miyoshi explains that for a well-cleared dungeon like Yoyogi, the Japan Dungeon Association, or JDA, has a ton of public information, online maps, monster locations, the works. They have to rely on manual mapping because drones and remote cameras are useless in here. The monsters would just eat them, and the radio waves get cut off anyway. Hey senpai, Miyoshi says, let's check the experience value of slimes. She then goes on a wild tangent about measuring human trafficking, which completely loses Yoshimura. He's just trying to figure out what she's getting at, but her train of thought is on a whole different track. Before he can question her sanity, they spot their first target. Yoshimura recalls the basic slime fighting strategy or lack thereof. They're mostly water, so slicing or hitting them does next to nothing. The only way to defeat one is to find and break a tiny, 1-centimeter core hidden somewhere inside its body. It's a frustrating, thankless task with zero reward. That's right, Miyoshi says with a grin. Everyone gets their spirit broken by them before moving on. And that's where my secret weapon comes in. She starts breaking down the science of it all. A slime holds its shape because of cohesive force and surface tension, just like a drop of water. Yoshimura is still completely lost. Miyoshi explains that for the first 10 or 20 levels of a dungeon, basic laws of physics still seem to apply. That's why firearms work at low levels but become completely useless against the tougher monsters deeper in. Her plan is to exploit that. She pulls out a simple spray bottle. We just need to lower its surface energy, she says, revealing her weapon, a surfactant, soapy water, and she didn't just bring one. She's got a whole lineup of different types ready for field testing. Yoshimura then notices her other piece of gear. Is that a frying pan? He asks, bewildered. Miyoshi scoffs, explaining that dungeon-authorized weapons are ridiculously expensive. This, however, is a 100% titanium wok. It's corrosion-resistant, lightweight, and its round shape is perfect for deflecting attacks. It's basically a cheap, high-performance shield. Yoshimura questions the logic of using a poor thermal conductor for its heat retention, but Miyoshi just brushes him off. It's time for the experiment to begin. Miyoshi takes aim and sprays the first surfactant, sodium dodecylbenzene sulfonate. Fire, she shouts as if casting a magic spell. The slime quivers, but it doesn't seem very effective. Undeterred, she switches to the next bottle. This one is the cationic type, she says, giving it a spritz. The effect is instantaneous and violent. The slime pops like a water balloon, its liquid body splashing away to reveal a small, black core on the ground. Yoshimura is stunned. Did you spray it with alien drool or something? He asks. Miyoshi proudly reveals the main component, benzethonium chloride. It's a super effective disinfectant. They've just discovered the slime's ultimate weakness. They're vulnerable to household cleaners. Yoshimura immediately thinks about the stock market. Should they start buying shares in pharmaceutical companies? Miyoshi crushes the exposed core with her boot. Slimes are no longer an enemy, she declares with a massive grin. She then pivots back to her original goal, quantifying experience points. She asks Yoshimura if he has a stat for that, and he confirms he has something called SP or skill points that he can use to boost his attributes. With their first successful test complete, they spot another slime, and Miyoshi points. It's his turn. He pulls out his dungeon card, his stats on display, and agrees to be the guinea pig. Yoshimura steps up, aims the disinfectant, and shouts the chemical name just like Miyoshi did. She gives him a deadpan look, asking if he really needs to name the attack. He sprays the slime, it pops, and he smashes the core with his hammer. A faint ping echoes in his mind. He checks his card. His SP has gone up, but only by a minuscule amount. Still, it's progress. Miyoshi is ecstatic. Alright, let's go get some more. Later, back at their apartment, Miyoshi is hunched over her laptop, analyzing the data from their 72 slime kills. The results are fascinating. The first 10 slimes gave a consistent amount of SP. But after the 10th kill, the experience gain dropped to a fraction of the original value for every slime thereafter. Yoshimura pieces it together. Unlike in games where the required EXP to level up increases, here, the EXP gained from the same monster decreases after repeated kills. Miyoshi nods, processing this new information. This leads them to two possible hypotheses. Hypothesis 1. The SP you earn decreases the more you kill a monster continuously. Hypothesis 2. The actual value is the lure amount, and you just get a bonus for the first 10 kills of a new monster type. They can't verify anything until they fight something else, like the goblins on the second floor. Miyoshi mentions she's taking a course to get a merchant's license, which is why she's free from her own job. Yoshimura looks at the data, a small smile on his face. He has zero regrets about quitting his old life. This analyzing, strategizing, discovering this is the kind of work he truly enjoys. Miyoshi then points out an anomaly. One of the data points doesn't fit the pattern. Yoshimura thinks back and remembers kicking some pebbles near a slime another explorer was fighting. That's it. You can get experience just by contributing to a fight, no matter how small your contribution is. They both realize how broken this is. You could just follow people around, kick a rock during their fights, and leech experience. If this information got out, it would cause chaos. They agree to keep this discovery to themselves for now, but something is still bothering Yoshimura. He thinks about the earliest explorers, who must have killed tens of thousands over the years. They should have accumulated a ton of SP. Yet, somehow, a complete rookie is at the top of the leaderboard. It doesn't make any sense. The next day, rumors are already spreading around the Yoyogi dungeon about a guy in normal clothes, with no gear, just walking in and out of the entrance. The staff are concerned he might be suicidal, but it's just Yoshimura, back with a determined look on his face. He's here to test his hypotheses. He finds a slime deep enough that no one is around, and gets to work with his mystery beam and hammer attack. As he's now calling them, he smashes the core, gets his SP, and thinks he really needs a better name for the sprayer attack. He checks his card again. The SP gain is back to the higher, bonus amount. He kills another, and it drops to the lower value. This confirms it. The bonus resets. This sparks two new hypotheses. Does the bonus reset after a certain amount of time passes, or does it reset every time you enter the dungeon? He immediately begins testing. He leaves the dungeon, goes through the entry procedure again, and comes back in to kill another slime. The ping confirms it. The bonus is back. It seems to reset on re-entry. But then he realizes his disinfectant only works on slimes. This is going to be a pain to test on other monsters. With no armor and only a hammer, he knows he's unprepared for a real fight. So for today, he'll just focus on the slimes. He proceeds to enter and exit the dungeon 14 times, meticulously testing his theory. He discovers that on one of those runs, the bonus didn't reset. He suspects it's because he didn't go far enough away from the entrance, so he refines his experiment. He starts testing different distances and times spent outside the dungeon. The results are clear. Time doesn't matter, but distance does. You have to physically leave the dungeon's zone of influence before coming back in for the system to register it as a new entry. Satisfied with his findings, he heads for the exit, but he's stopped by a JDA staff member. She introduces herself as Naruse and informs him that his repeated, unequipped entries and exits have caused some concern. They thought he might be trying to harm himself. She kindly returns his card, but her question is direct. Mr. Yoshimura, what on earth were you doing? He explains he was just running some tests for his research, which piques her interest. She advises him to wear at least some basic gear to avoid future misunderstandings, and even points him towards some outlet shops. She's sharp, but surprisingly kind, and asks him to let her know when his findings become available. As she leaves, Yoshimura checks his notes. He's defeated 99 slimes so far. He can't just stop there. With a determined look, he heads back in. 100 kills. Done. And then everything changes. A system window pops up in front of him. By defeating 100 slimes, he's unlocked a new function for his unique skill, making. It turns out his ability wasn't just for allocating SP. Under specific conditions, he can unlock powerful new skills. A list appears showing skills related to slimes. Physical resistance, water magic, hyper recovery, storage, and vault. His mind races. These are skills that normally only appear as incredibly rare monster drops. The numbers next to them are astronomical 1 in 100 million, 1 in a billion. They represent the mind-bogglingly low drop rates. He notes the difference between storage and vault, speculating that vault might be a higher-tier version. If the numbers are to be believed, its rarity is off the charts. Still, faced with a choice, he does what any gamer would do. He picks the rarest one on the list. A glowing orb materializes before him. After his new skill is acquired, he quickly tests one more thing by killing another slime, then immediately sends an email to Miyoshi. She arrives at his apartment, her eyes wide with shock. Did you really get a skill orb? He calms her down and lets her in, showing her the prize, a smooth, marble-like orb with the word vault inscribed on it. Miyoshi immediately pulls out her laptop to check the JDA database. As expected, a 1 in a billion drop is completely unregistered. Yoshimura then shows her his notes, explaining the new function of his making skill. This changes everything. he can essentially choose his reward. The implications are staggering. This one ability could turn the world upside down. But they both know they have a lot more to verify. Their next goal is set. Hunt 100 goblins in a row to see if the mechanic repeats. Out of curiosity, Moshi looks up the market price for water magic, one of the other skills on his list. It's already registered and has sold for 80 million yen. A million? Yoshimura can hardly comprehend it. At that price, in terms of military cost-effectiveness, a single skill orb could be as valuable as a fighter jet. They briefly discuss the taxes, a flat 10% on all dungeon income, but as Moshi grimly points out, the real cost in a dungeon isn't money. There's no carrying over your losses, you just carry over your life. Or you don't. Moshi examines the vault orb again. She theorizes it's an item box skill, a classic trope from fantasy novels. If this information ever got out, the perception of slimes would change overnight. Yoyogi's first floor would become a war zone, with explorers hunting the previously worthless monsters to extinction. They both agree. This discovery stays between them. Now, for the big question. What do they do with the orb? Yoshimura offers it to Moshi, thinking it would be a huge help for her career as a merchant. But she hesitates. He's a dungeon explorer, he needs it just as much if not more. This brings up a critical, terrifying problem. They have no idea how his skill system works. Can he even learn a second skill? Or would learning Vault overwrite his unique and irreplaceable making skill? The risk is too high. Moshi starts thinking about the real-world applications. This isn't a fantasy novel, it's modern Japan. An item box would be a game-changer for logistics, self-defense, and especially dungeon diving. Then, a flash of brilliance hits her. Can we store skill orbs as well? As if in response, the orb itself displays a timer, showing it has existed for nearly a full day. This isn't a temporary item. It's a real, persistent object in their world. Since Yoshimura continues his monotonous grind, spending yet another day on the first floor of the Yoyogi dungeon. He meticulously carves a Nali mark into his notebook, bringing the total to a staggering number. Day in and day out, it's the same routine, the same slimes, the same low-level drops. But he's not just grinding for experience, he's grinding with a purpose, hoping that sheer repetition will trigger something, anything new. And then it happens. A familiar blue screen materializes before him, but this one is different. A surge of excitement courses through him. This is it. After his 200th clear, a special shop has finally unlocked. But his excitement quickly turns to disbelief as he scans the list of available skill orbs. The prices are utterly insane, running into the hundreds of millions, even billions of yen figures that are completely unattainable for any normal explorer. He then notices a vault skill, but it's grayed out, seemingly unselectable. At the very bottom, a timer is ticking down, adding a new layer of pressure. He immediately recognizes the timer for what it is, a cooldown. This is a limited time offer, and once that clock hits zero, this opportunity might be gone forever. He has to think fast. With Miyoshi's advice in mind, he decides to run an experiment. He selects one of the cheaper orbs, water magic, and a plan begins to form in his mind. Focusing his intent, he tries to place the shimmering blue orb in the grayed-out vault skill. A vortex of energy swirls around his hand, and to his astonishment, the orb is successfully absorbed into the vault. The implications hit him like a lightning bolt. He didn't just dust the vault, he seems to have acquired the skill itself, all without losing his original making ability. He now has both. This changes everything. The fundamental rule of dungeons that orbs disappear in 24 hours has just been broken. He realizes that if orbs can be stored indefinitely, it's not just a game changer. It's a revolution that will upend the entire world's economy and power structure. Later, he discusses the monumental discovery with Moshi. She listens, her expression growing more serious with every word. She points out the terrifying reality. If this technology be public, they won't just be rich, they'll be targets for every major corporation and government on the planet. The pressure is immense, but Miyoshi's resolve is unshakable. She slaps the table with a startling intensity, her filled with a mix of fear and excitement. Either way, it's going to be like a Hollywood movie, senpai. She looks him dead in the eye and makes a promise. If that orb is still in his vault tomorrow, she's quitting her job to go all in with him. This is their shot, and she's not about to let it slip by. A month later, on October 26th, the world has already changed for Yoshimura. His quiet life is a distant memory, replaced by the notoriety of suddenly becoming the #1 ranked explorer. True to her word, Moshi resigned from her job, and so did he. They've set up a small office in his apartment, and their hard work is already paying off. There's now stocked with a handful of valuable skill orbs they've farmed, including hyper recovery and a few elemental resistances. Moshi, having taken charge of the business side, explains the hurdles they face. In Japan, it's nearly impossible to make large transactions without your name being attached, which would put a massive target on Yoshimura's back. So, she's come up with a brilliant workaround. Therefore, she says with a sly grin, I've decided to use the party system. She explains that while the system was designed for explorers to share profits and buy gear, it functions as a single legal entity for financial purposes. By making herself the party leader, her name will be the public face of their operation, while Yoshimura's identity remains completely hidden from the world. Of course, this venture isn't without its costs. She dramatically presents her bank book, lamenting how her savings are rapidly disappearing to fund their startup. Despite the costs, she's been incredibly proactive. She's already built a placeholder website to start selling the orbs. It's just a framework for now, but it's the beginning of their empire. They've officially formed their new party, and Yoshimura, feeling a bit guilty for letting her do all the work, can only bow an apology. The name of their new company? Dungeon Powers. A slightly cheesy name Miyoshi came up with after a celebratory drink. But it's theirs. With Miyoshi as the leader and Yoshimura as the only other member, they set sail on their new adventure. The moment their website goes live, the world reacts. Across the globe, screens light up with the unprecedented auction site. A hardened military man, a shadowy government agent, they all stop what they're doing, their faces a mask of shock and intrigue. The world is officially in turmoil. A new era has begun. The launch of Dungeon Powers sends shockwaves around the planet. At the Kasumigaseki Dungeon Agency, it's absolute chaos. Phones are ringing non-stop as agents scramble to answer a flood of inquiries. Is it a scam? Is it legal? No one has any answers. Meanwhile, Yoshimura is at the Yoyogi dungeon when he's stopped by a familiar face. Miss Naruse from the JDA. He realizes she's one of the few people who knows Miyoshi is the public face of their operation, connecting him directly to the chaos. They sit down, and Naruse gets straight to the point. The JDA is being swamped with calls about their site. Yoshimura plays it cool, asking if it seems like a prank, maybe an early April Fool's joke. Naruse isn't amused. She knows the orbs they've listed water magic and physical resistance, and she knows that orbs are supposed to disappear. The physical resistance orb, in particular, is an incredibly rare skill, confirming this isn't just a random hoax. She leans in, her gaze intense, and asks the one question on everyone's mind. Have you discovered a way to save the orbs? The air grows thick with tension. Yoshimura deflects, giving a vague, non-committal answer about it being a difficult issue. He knows he's walking a tightrope. Naruse explains the political reality. If such a method exists, the government will demand it, explorer or not. Yoshimura knows he can't let that happen. The potential profits are astronomical, but his freedom is priceless. Naruse then lays a perfect trap, asking if the JDA could hire them to store an orb. A yes confirms he has the technology. A no invites a deeper investigation. He's cornered, but Yoshimura sees an opening. He agrees, but only if certain conditions are met. And then he flips the script entirely, proposing that Miss Naruse herself act as their mediator for any future dealings with the JDA, turning a potential adversary into a crucial ally. He leaves her to consider the offer, a small smile playing on his lips. Elsewhere, in a sterile government building, a high-ranking official dismisses the website as just another scam. His subordinate, a sharp young man named Siro, quickly corrects him. The commercial license legitimate, registered to Azusa Miyoshi. If the auction is real, its value is immeasurable. The official asks for a recommendation. Siro's assessment is chilling. The technology behind the site is both a priceless treasure and an existential threat. He connects it to rumors of an otherworld language, suggesting this could be the key. The official makes his decision. They will investigate, and if it's real, they'll make their move, all in the name of public safety and order. Back at their apartment base, Yoshimura recounts his meeting with Naruse. He explains how she cornered him, and how the JDA is in an uproar. Miyoshi sighs, acknowledging that the world will have to accept the truth eventually. Yoshimura then reveals his masterstroke, making Naruse their mediator. They begin hashing out the terms for their service. With Miyoshi realizing they can charge a fortune, she proposes a hefty 20% storage fee plus a 10% commission. Yoshimura thinks it's extortion, but she calmly explains that after taxes and fees, it's a perfectly normal rate. They decide to let the auction run its course to establish a market price. Miyoshi's confidence is soaring. They are the only ones in the world who can do this. Not even legendary auction houses like Sotheby's or Christie's could handle an item that simply vanishes. The proof is on the screen. The bidding for the orbs is already astronomical, and they've implemented anti-sniping measures to ensure the highest possible price. They're offering the orbs with a 3-day survival timer, a miracle in itself. Yoshimura muses on what the military would pay for an attack magic orb that didn't expire. The realization dawns on them both. We're shaking the world, she says, and he can only agree. With a successful bid looking inevitable, they plan the delivery. It has to be in person. Miyoshi outlines a secure digital key exchange to guarantee a safe transfer of funds and the orb itself. Yoshimura, ever the pragmatist, worries they might have to flee the country afterward. Miyoshi, on the other hand, is already dreaming of a company vacation. They start fantasizing about trips to Europe or South America, a life they never could have imagined just a month ago, but they quickly pull themselves back to reality, knowing they can't celebrate just yet. As they plan, the internet is on fire. Forums are flooded with threads debating the legitimacy of deep powers. Is it a scam? How can they guarantee an orb for 3 days? Who are these people? The world is watching, waiting and wondering. In 3 days, they'll all have their answer. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving back into the world of Genesis, where our boy Yoshimura is about to learn that sometimes, the quietest corners of a dungeon hold the biggest surprises. 3 years have passed since dungeons appeared, and the Yoyogi dungeon has become a hotspot for participants. Yet, the first floor remains eerily empty, just the way Yoshimura likes it. As he navigates the silent stone corridors, flashlight in hand, his mind is already running through the potential threats. He's not worried about goblins or wolves. His concern is far more insidious. He's thinking about the slimes that sometimes cling to the ceiling. Waiting, he knows the playbook on these things all too well. They drop silently onto unsuspecting prey, and once they make contact, they're nearly impossible to peel off. Their acidic bodies cause severe burns, and conventional weapons like fire barely faze them. He has a special tool he thinks might work, but he'd really rather not have to test that theory today. Just as he's lost in thought, a faint sound cuts through the silence and his head snaps up. He heard something. Then, a blood-curdling scream echoes through the cavern. All's cautious planning goes out the window. Without a second hesitation, Yoshimura breaks into a dead sprint, running towards the sound of trouble. He rounds a corner and finds exactly what he was afraid of: 2 young women in a panic. One of them is desperately trying to pull a grotesque, gelatinous slime off her friend's face. The girl with the slime is thrashing, muffled cries for help coming from beneath the suffocating creature. Yoshimura doesn't waste a moment. He grabs a spray bottle from his bag, yelling, "Eat some onium chloride," and unleashes a powerful stream directly onto the monster. The effect is instantaneous. The slime's form destabilizes, dissolving into a harmless, dripping liquid that slides right off the girl's face. He quickly moves in, offering a towel. "Are you alright?" he asks, his voice calm despite the adrenaline. The girl, shaken and crying, manages a thank you through her sniffling, apologizing for the trouble. Just as the situation calms down, the other girl suddenly points at him, a spark of recognition in her eyes. "Ah, you're that researcher guy." Yoshimura is taken aback. He recognizes them too, faintly. "Miss Saito, right? What a surprise." He remembers her, but her friend's name escapes him. The girl he just saved introduces herself as Mitsurugi. He quickly offers her some water to rinse off the chemical, explaining it's basically a disinfectant and is harmless unless you drink it. Her friend, Saito, notices a patch of red on Mitsurugi's cheek. Yoshimura immediately panics, thinking his solution caused a reaction. "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize," he sputters, turning away in embarrassment. It's a surprisingly destructive force, he thinks to himself. After the awkward moment passes, they formally introduce themselves: Ryoko Saito and Haruka Mitsurugi. Saito explains they're with a modeling and acting agency, and her impressive profiling skills are why she remembered him. Yoshimura is clearly a bit overwhelmed by the whole situation. Mitsurugi, now recovered, eyes the spray bottle with fascination. "Is it a secret weapon?" she asks, wondering where she could buy one. Yoshimura sheepishly admits he made it at home, and it's not commercially available. Seeing her crestfallen face, he quickly offers to just give her the bottle. He can always make more. He's just a humble researcher, and suddenly he's talking to an actress and a model, who are even handing him a business card. This day is getting stranger by the minute. Saito then says something that throws him for a loop. She mentions gaining an aura through experience. Yoshimura is completely lost. "What?" Saito explains that her friend, Haru, is at a crossroads in her career, a border, as she puts it. She likes the ambiguity of being on the edge, but it's a difficult place to be. Yoshimura tries to process this, thinking about the contrast between Mitsurugi's public image, soft and cute, and the determined person he sees before him. Saito elaborates that Haru is a gravure model, a genre that typically favors a different look. Because of her slender, more neutral appearance, she often gets dropped from projects because producers feel something's lacking. The conversation circles back to aura. It's not about her physical body but her presence, her personality. And suddenly, something clicks for Yoshimura. He translates it into terms he understands. "I wonder if what they're referring to by aura is optimizing your movement," he muses aloud. He explains how models and actors control their bodies with immense precision to convey emotion and create a perfect silhouette. The human eye is incredibly sensitive to the slightest deviation. He connects the dots. So, in this case, optimizing your movement means you can move your body however you want without any deviation. He then makes the final leap. "And you're talking about the mysterious effect gained by defeating monsters." Mitsurugi's eyes widen. "So you're saying I can get that ability by defeating monsters? Besides improving my strength, it can also improve my speed and control?" Yoshimura suggests that normal training should be fine, but Mitsurugi cuts him off. "There's a limit to that. Her tone is dead serious. The stakes are your life. The full story comes out. There's a massive audition in 2 months. She believes dungeon training is the only way to gain the edge she needs. But it's an insane gamble. For a model, a single scar could be a career-ending injury. Seeing her desperation and resolve, Yoshimura's mind starts turning. I have an idea, he says slowly, but you may think it sounds stupid. Without a moment's hesitation, they both lean in. Yes. Later, back at his makeshift office, Yoshimura is explaining the situation to his partner Miyoshi. So, you showed them the slang technique I taught you, Miyoshi says, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Yoshimura admits he regrets one part of his advice, telling her to look him in the eyes, a feat he himself finds difficult. He lays out his stupid plan. Mitsurugi will hunt slimes on the first floor of Yoyogi. The goal is to kill 100 a day for 50 days straight. He instructed her to aim for their cores with precision, speed, and force. Miyoshi is stunned. Most people are happy to get 10 attribute points over that time period. Yoshimura's plan, if it works, could net her 100 points in just 2 months. It's an unprecedented growth rate. Miyoshi is skeptical but decides to trust his senpai's strange logic. Yoshimura brushes it off, thinking that even with this boost, she'll just be another anonymous mid-level ranker. It shouldn't draw any unwanted attention. At that time, however, he had no idea how closely the government was watching the rankings, or what it truly meant to be a 4-digit ranker in Japan. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, 2 men are having a very different kind of conversation. A man named Simon is looking at a website on his laptop, a skill orb online auction. His colleague Joshua is immediately suspicious. It's too plain to be a scam, he says, but the logic doesn't add up. Skill orbs are supposed to vanish after 1 day, yet this site is running a 3-day auction. But the bidders are no joke. He sees the Japanese National Police Agency and the Ministry of Defense. This implies someone has discovered a method for preserving the orbs. Simon's expression turns serious. It's hard to believe, but mankind keeps advancing. If this is real, the individual behind this site is an asset more valuable than an aircraft carrier. They have to be recruited. The real bombshell is one of the items up for auction, a skill called physical resistance. Simon confirms with his intel network. It's an unknown skill. No one has it. An unknown skill on a public auction. This will get crazy. Simon grins. He decides to place a bid, whatever the cost. The current high bidder is a top ranker from China. Simon makes a decision. If his bid is successful, he's booking a flight to Yoyogi. Mason, one of his team, won't be able to go. This is a priority. It's good to have a vacation in Japan sometimes, he says with a predatory smile. A few days later, on Sunday, October 4th, the auction ends. Miyoshi bursts into the office while Yoshimura is getting out of the shower. Senpai, look at this, he yells, shoving his phone in Yoshimura's face. The final bids are in, and they are astronomical. The water magic orb sold for nearly 2 billion yen, almost $21 million. Yoshimura scrolls through the results, noticing all the magic orbs were bought by the same government ID, the Ministry of Defense. He supposes it makes sense. In the new world, a powerful warrior is a strategic asset, perhaps even more valuable than a fighter jet. But then they get to the main event, the physical resistance skill orb. The final price is jaw-dropping, over 3.5 billion yen, nearly $30 million. The winning ID is personal, a Mr. Simon Gershwin. Miyoshi quickly looks up the name. His face goes pale. What are you saying? This is the person. He used the phone to Yoshimura. It's the leader of the Evans dungeon capture team, the 12th ranked explorer in the entire world. The reality of the situation crashes down on them. After taxes and fees, their total profit is just under 9 billion yen, about $79 million. Yoshimura clutches his head, sighing. Everything is full of unexpected things. Miyoshi, ever the pragmatist, is already thinking about covering the development costs for their slime dissolving spray. Yoshimura is surprisingly numb to the news of his new billionaire status. He reminds Miyoshi that since they're the only 2 members of the party, half of that massive sum is his. Miyoshi immediately suggests they ditch their shabby office for a proper secret base, and Yoshimura's eyes light up like a kid's. Miyoshi then hands him a party card, explaining it's essentially a corporate credit card linked directly to their party funds, with no credit limit. Yoshimura, still stuck in a middle-class mindset, talks about saving the money, causing Miyoshi to burst out laughing. To help his senpai adjust, Miyoshi has set up an automatic transfer of 1% of all party deposits to Yoshimura's personal account. Yoshimura does the quick math and his brain short-circuits. I'm earning 90 million yen per month? That's just for this first month. Miyoshi grins, then cheekily reminds him about Japan's hefty residence tax, which brings him crashing back down to earth. The next day they prepare for the delivery. Miyoshi, wanting to make a grand impression, has ordered custom-made titanium cases with velvet lining and intricate, completely fake magic circles etched on the inside. These cases alone cost a fortune. He admits the magic circles are a bluff, just something he designed to look cool and confuse any research institutes that might analyze them. The delivery is set for the next day at the JDA building. The government wants to meet them, and Miyoshi asks Yoshimura to come along as a party member. Yoshimura agrees. He wants to remain anonymous, but he can't leave Miyoshi to handle this alone. As Miyoshi leaves to go apartment hunting, Yoshimura heads back to the one place that still feels normal, the dungeon. The scene shifts to Camp Narashino, a military base in Chiba. We meet 2nd Lieutenant Iori Kimitsu of the Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces Special Dungeon Unit. Even on a Sunday, she's training, her mind on the changing nature of her work. She thinks back to the first skill orb she ever saw drop, the one that set her on this path. Otherworld language. Her training is interrupted by a colleague, Hagan. He informs her she has a high-priority meeting tomorrow at Ichigaya, the Ministry of Defense headquarters. The order came directly from Major Terasawa, which is highly unusual. Iori's first thought is that it's related to her otherworld language skill. Was that real? She asks, shocked, but Hagan shakes his head. No. Apparently it's a rumor, but the Defense Ministry won that auction. He's talking about the D-Powers auction, the one everyone thought was a scam until it stayed live for 3 days. The Major wants them all there, a clear sign that something massive is happening. As they make plans to travel together, Hagan playfully teases her for training alone on a Sunday instead of finding a date. With a sharp retort and a good-natured smile, Iori heads off, completely unaware that she's about to come face-to-face with the very people who just turned the world of dungeon exploration on its head. The day after a big dungeon run always feels a bit surreal. But for Yoshimura, it's starting with a killer hangover. He complains to Miyoshi that he feels like a bug, completely drained from their excursion. But Miyoshi, ever the whirlwind of chaos, drops a bombshell that sobers him up instantly. While he was recovering, she got tired of house hunting, so she just went ahead and bought a place. And not just any place. Apparently, the stress of dealing with real estate agents led her to just buy a big, 2-family house to get it over with. The layout is actually perfect for their new venture. A ground-floor office for D-Powers, and 2 separate apartments on the 2nd floor, one for each of them. With their headquarters sorted, it's time for their first official piece of business. They're in a sterile meeting room, about to make their first Thursday delivery of goods. Their client is a stern-looking man in a military uniform named Terasawa. The exchange is professional and high-tech. He hands over an SD card, which Miyoshi plugs into her laptop. With a click, she confirms the contents are what they expect. She then presents 3 sleek, metallic briefcases. The goods are ready for inspection. A mediator from the JDA, Miss Naruse, steps in to lay down the ground rules. Once the orbs are touched, the transaction is considered complete, and there are no takebacks. She confirms the contents, 3 water magic skill orbs, all with remarkably low counts, indicating their purity and power. Terasawa and his colleague look genuinely surprised by the quality. He asks to check the goods, and Naruse explains the payment process. All the money is funneled through the JDA, which handles all the taxes and fees before transferring the final amount to the seller, ensuring everything is clean and by the book. With all parties in agreement, the transaction is confirmed. Terasawa gives a solemn nod. The orbs now belong to the Ministry of Defense. The deal is officially done. A wave of relief washes over the room, but Terasawa isn't quite finished. He leans forward, his curiosity piqued. How? He asks, were you able to get all 3 of these from the dungeon in less than an hour? Miyoshi just gives him a playful smile and calls it a trade secret. Just as they're about to wrap up, Terasawa stops them. There's one last thing. He gestures to a quiet man who has been sitting in the corner the whole time. The man introduces himself as Tanaka, and when Yoshimura asks about his affiliation, Tanaka's smile is anything but reassuring. He reveals he's here under the orders of various government ministries. The friendly business atmosphere evaporates in an instant. Tanaka slides a document across the table. It's an official government order, formally requesting that Azusa Miyoshi and Keigo Yoshimura refrain from all international travel. They are, for all intents and purposes, grounded. Yoshimura is floored. He can't believe this is happening. Tanaka explains that since their massive skill orb auction, intelligence agencies from around the world have taken a very keen interest in them. Yoshimura argues that it's an overreaction, but Tanaka is firm. From the government's perspective, the 2 of them now pose a significant risk to national security. If they absolutely must travel, they have to contact him first, and they'll be assigned a security detail normally reserved for VIPs. He places his business card on the table, a clear and final statement. With a polite but firm bow, he declares his business concluded and leaves the room. Yoshimura is left speechless as the door slams shut. Even Terasawa seems a bit shaken, admitting that his superiors insisted Tanaka attend the meeting. He quickly makes his own exit, leaving Yoshimura and Miyoshi to process what just happened. The reality of their new life crashes down on Miyoshi. All her plans to travel, to eat amazing food in Europe, to see Angkor Wat all gone. She slumps onto the table in defeat, trying to break the heavy silence. Miss Naruse points out the silver lining. They just earned an astronomical amount of money in under 30 minutes. But Miyoshi just groans, reminding them she doesn't get the commission on this one. Naruse invites them to lunch, but after a brief discussion about a fancy restaurant, they realize they don't have the time or the cash on hand for something like that. Yoshimura suggests a more practical option, and Naruse offers up the JDA cafeteria. It turns out to be a surprisingly good deal, a hearty meal for a bargain price. After their surprisingly normal lunch, they head to their next meeting. Naruse tells them they're meeting her boss, Section Chief Saiga, but as they enter the room, they're greeted not by Saiga, but by an old, imperious-looking man who introduces himself as Executive Director Mizuho. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries, immediately throwing out an offer of 100 million yen. Yoshimura and Naruse are completely blindsided. What is this guy even talking about? Seeing their confusion, Mizuho gets impatient, lowering the offer and clarifying that he wants to buy their orb preservation technology. He waves his hand dismissively, clearly expecting a quick deal. Yoshimura, however, sees the game being played. He puts on a polite smile and states that there must be a misunderstanding. They don't have any technology to sell. They're just ordinary people. Mizuho sputters, completely taken aback. Yoshimura then expertly twists the knife, mentioning he saw folks from the Ministry of Defense in the lobby earlier. The implication is clear. Is Mizuho trying to poach a deal from the military? The director starts to sweat, realizing he's been caught in a lie. Yoshimura completes his masterful bluff by playing the part of a simple merchant, explaining how relieved they were to finally sell the orbs they worked so hard to acquire. The director, now totally exposed, is left speechless. He has no idea that JDA is even considering developing orb storage technology. He turns on his subordinate, a man named Furai, who is practically melting with fear. With a furious shout, Mizuho storms out of the room, dragging his terrified underling with him. Naruse is mortified, explaining the embarrassing office politics at play. The meeting was supposed to be with Saiga, but her direct boss, Furai, got ambitious and roped in the executive director to try and steal the glory. Yoshimura, ever observant, admits he'd already pieced it together from reading about JDA's internal power struggles in a magazine. Miyoshi teases him for being surprisingly kind to Miss Naruse. This leads to a sweet moment where Yoshimura acknowledges that Miyoshi's impulsive spending is part of what makes them work, and she tells him he'd be more popular if he showed this side more often. Just then, the man they were actually supposed to meet arrives. Section Chief Saiga enters, apologizing profusely for his director's foolishness. Now, the real negotiations can finally begin. With Miyoshi taking a moment to recover, Yoshimura steps up to lead. Saiga gets straight to the point. He wants to discuss storing orbs. He explains the current market is inefficient. Explorers either use orbs themselves or face a long waiting list to sell. D-Powers, however, can provide rare orbs on demand, giving them incredible leverage. Saiga's proposal is that the JDA wants to be able to call on them to supply orbs for auction whenever they're needed. Yoshimura immediately understands. They don't want a partnership, they want an exclusive, on-demand supplier. Yoshimura takes control. He starts by asking a few questions, testing Saiga's limits. He confirms that obtaining orbs with a massive count is theoretically possible, though difficult. Then, he lays out his ingenious condition: a 48-hour notice period if JDA needs orbs. He calls it a simple misdirection. They will lose the orbs, and when the JDA needs them, they will coincidentally find them just in time for delivery. This strategy gives them perfect plausible deniability about their ability to create orbs out of thin air. Saiga is sharp. He understands the game immediately. Yoshimura knows the JDA stands to make a massive profit, but he also understands the immense political and military power these orbs represent. So he names his price, a minimum fee of 100 million yen per orb, or 80% of the final auction price, whichever is higher. He also demands exclusivity with the JDA's auction house. But he's not done. He adds the most important clause: this is a high-risk venture. If either he or Miyoshi dies, all the orbs in their possession will be lost forever. He gives them a 3-year window, a time frame in which he hopes to solve this problem. After a tense moment of consideration, Saiga agrees to everything. The deal is struck. Saiga is confident his superiors will approve the terms, and as a direct result of this new, high-level contract, he turns to Naruse and gives her a field promotion. She is now the dedicated supervisor for D-Powers, a career-defining advancement that leaves her utterly shocked. Miyoshi can't help but tease her about the massive commission she just indirectly earned. Saiga departs, leaving Naruse to meet her new, very square, dedicated manager, she's still trying to wrap her head around her new role, which essentially makes her a full-time liaison at their beck and call. Miyoshi cheekily suggests she's not a spy, which Naruse fervently denies. As they wrap up, Yoshimura quietly tells Naruse to prepare for another orb soon, bringing her into their inner circle. The weight of her new responsibilities is already settling in. 1 month later, at the Ministry of Defense, we see the fruits of their labor. Young soldiers are being issued the water magic orbs. They're hesitant, knowing the immense value of what they're holding, but Major Terasawa explains that these tools are for them, the ones on the front lines, to increase their chances of survival in the brutal reality of the dungeons. One soldier reaches out and uses the orb. A flash of light envelops him, and he looks down at his hands, feeling like he's been completely reborn. These orbs aren't just items, they're lifesavers. In his office, Terasawa discusses D-powers with his subordinate, Lieutenant Kimitsu. He's still trying to figure them out. He finds it strange that they can get orbs so easily. He notes that only 2 people are registered under D-powers, yet they managed to acquire 3 high-quality orbs in a single day, while the entire JDA has only managed 6 in 3 years. He recalls the mysterious government man, Tanaka, and the travel ban. It's clear this is a matter of national security. His chief told him to let Tanaka handle it, but Terasawa's instincts are screaming that there's more to the story. He theorizes that D-powers isn't just a party of 2. They must be a front for a larger network of explorers, possibly connected to the anonymous top ranker. Could they actually be creating the orbs themselves? He dismisses the thought as impossible, but the seed has been planted. His curiosity getting the better of him, Terasawa pulls up the JDA's monitored skill list on his computer. He filters through the data, and his eyes land on a single, suspiciously vague entry, a skill simply named making. He starts to wonder what he would create with such a power. After dismissing his lieutenant, Terasawa sits alone in his office, the gears turning in his head. He's not gonna let this go. He pulls up the JDA's internal directory. He has one more move to make, and it starts with a man named Saiga Minoru. The investigation has just begun. Yoshimura and Azusa arrive at their destination, a place called Toldwa Labs. It's a modest building, tucked away in an industrial area that feels like the far edge of Tokyo. Miyoshi, looking a bit disappointed, remarks that she was expecting something a little more state-of-the-art for a medical measurement facility. It looks more like an old factory. Just then, a woman in a lab coat steps out. Before Azusa can even get a word in, she coolly tells him to mind his own business. Azusa, however, lights up, waving enthusiastically. "Senpai Midori, it's been a long time." Midori's stern expression melts instantly into a warm smile as she affectionately ruffles his hair. It's clear they have a close history, and Yoshimura just watches on, a silent observer to their reunion. So, Midori begins, getting down to business. "What exactly are you wanting to measure?" When Azusa replies with a cheerful everything, her smile vanishes. The request is so absurd she can't help but twitch. She reminds him how expensive that would be, pointing out that their own funding has all but dried up. She launches into a rant about the struggles of a small venture, unable to get loans without collateral and forced to do work they aren't suited for. Her frustration finally lands on Yoshimura, whom she glares at and calls a rude man. Yoshimura, unfazed, calmly introduces himself. Midori reciprocates, introducing herself as Naruse, before adding a sharp warning. "You better not have put your hands on Azusa." The name clicks for Yoshimura. He's stunned for a moment, thinking she looks exactly like Miss Naruse from the JDA. Midori clarifies without missing a beat. "You mean Miharu? She's my sister." Now it's Azusa's turn to be shocked. The revelation that their dedicated managing supervisor at the JDA is her sister makes the world feel incredibly small. With the surprising connection made, Midori leads them inside to handle the paperwork and begin the experiment. Inside, the true scope of their request becomes clear. Midori lays out the plan on a clipboard. "We're measuring all items, and the number of trials will be 30. She looks at them incredulously, emphasizing the cost will be around 6 million yen. She assumes they're billing Azusa's nearly bankrupt company, but Yoshimura corrects her. They're paying out of pocket. He waves it off as a simple research and development expense, leaving Midori utterly speechless at the casual display of wealth. Yoshimura enters the sterile testing room, approaching a large, cylindrical machine that looks like a high-tech MRI. He lies down on the platform, ready for the procedure to begin. Midori explains that since the machine is a prototype, they have to attach the sensor cables manually. She warns him he'll feel a small sting on his arm for each of the 30 blood draws required. He just nods, completely calm. He's ready, giving her a confident thumbs up. As the platform begins to slide into the machine, he asks how he should signal her. She reassures him that she'll be able to hear him just fine from the control room. Alone inside the capsule, Yoshimura closes his eyes and whispers a single word, Making, a translucent screen, visible only to him, materializes. His stats are displayed, and they are astronomical for a rank explorer. His SP alone is well over 1,000. This is the secret he's here to understand. Before the test begins, he has one last request. Make sure all the results are time-stamped. With everything set, the machine hums to life, and he feels the first prick of the needle in his arm as the experiment officially starts. The process is methodical. Yoshimura focuses, and his status screen appears. He carefully allocates 2 points into his strength stat, and the machine registers the change. This process repeats over and over for every stat, for every item. By the time the 30th and final measurement is complete, more than 2 hours have passed. Emerging from the machine, Yoshimura sighs, clearly a bit drained. Midori hands him a small data card with the results, noting that his arm is pretty swollen from the repeated blood draws. We don't normally do 30 tests in a row, she adds dryly. Azusa is amazed at how quickly they have the data. That's one of our selling points, Midori says with a hint of pride. Yoshimura cuts to the chase, asking if they found anything strange. Midori shakes her head, confirming that all his physiological data, his vitals, his blood work was perfectly normal throughout all 30 tests. But another researcher, a man named Nakajima, walks in holding a tablet with a different story. He looks troubled. The brainwaves are a little, he trails off. He explains that as the measurements progressed, Yoshimura's brainwave frequency increased slightly, but it did so in 6 distinct stages. It's an anomaly they can't explain. Nakajima clarifies that this isn't a medical diagnosis. They're just discussing the raw data. Normally, brainwaves slow down under these conditions, and the pattern they're seeing is highly unusual, though he dismisses any serious medical concerns. Then he drops the bombshell. Unusual fluctuations in electromagnetic waves were recorded. Midori explains that the entire room is gridded with sensors. Yoshimura had half-jokingly asked them to measure everything down to the minimum grid, a throwaway comment. Nakajima manages a slight smile, admitting that Yoshimura's joke may have been surprisingly on target. There was something in that room with him, an energy field they can't explain. On the train ride home, the two of them process the bizarre results. Azusa theorizes it could be something like a dungeon-powered exoskeleton, but Yoshimura immediately points out the flaw. If his physical body were being enhanced to that degree, the force of his own punches would shatter his bones and tear his muscles. His cells aren't getting stronger on a physiological level. The data proves it. An infographic in his mind illustrates the problem. If you double the power output, you have to double the energy input, which cause massive, observable changes in the body. The only explanation that fits is that it's not an internal change, but an external one. A field of energy surrounding his body, acting like an invisible suit of armor. The 6 stages of brainwave fluctuation they observed must correspond to the 6 main attributes: strength, vitality, intelligence, and so on. The stunning conclusion they're reaching is that his power isn't biological. It's a supernatural field generated by his own mind, a power akin to psychic ability. Meanwhile, at the Yokota Air Base, the world's political gears are turning. A high-ranking officer is being briefed on the arrival of Lieutenant General Martinez and his entourage, an explorer group known as Team Simon. They're described as highly competent, but also a constant source of trouble. Their latest achievement was capturing a dungeon deeper than any other in the world, a feat hailed as a massive success for the US. The officer looks out at the plane on the tarmac, musing that if the dungeon progenitor theory holds true, these reckless explorers could one day become the heroes of Earth. As soon as they step off the plane, Team Simon's loud and boisterous personalities are on full display. They're already arguing about hotels and acting more like they're on a rowdy vacation than a serious mission. Their leader, a charismatic man, generously books them a top-tier hotel in Shinjuku, and the team celebrates, ready to settle in. Back at the JDA headquarters, Administration Executive Director Mizuno is under immense pressure. A major from the Ministry of Defense recently dropped an unwanted bomb in his lap. A classified document about a skill orb discovered in Russia. Mizuno can't figure out the ministry's angle. Why share this information? What do they know that the JDA doesn't? Unsettled, he calls his most trusted subordinate, Miharu Naruse, into his office. He gets straight to the point, asking why she's taken such a keen interest in D-Powers. She gives the standard corporate answer about their profitability and preservation of unknown tech. But he presses her. Ever hear of the dungeon passage theory? He asks. She dismisses it as a wild, outrageous theory from some fringe book, but Mizuno reveals that Russia has just released evidence. The theory posits that dungeons aren't just self-contained spaces, but gateways to another place entirely. It was laughed off by the mainstream until a very special orb was discovered. This orb, found in a Russian dungeon, granted its user the ability to understand languages from within the dungeon. While fascinating, it wasn't sensational enough to cause a global panic. However, the man transporting the orb managed a partial translation of an inscription found deep inside the dungeon, and its contents were world-shattering. The text claimed dungeons are terraforming tools that use a substance called magic element. It implies the existence of another world, one not yet connected to ours, and suggests that dungeons with more than 128 layers act as a direct passage to that world. Naruse is left completely stunned, unable to speak. Mizuno admits the information is unverified, but it's too compelling to ignore. And this, he explains, is where D-Powers comes in. They're acquiring multiple orbs from a complete unknown source, despite only ever clearing the easiest floors of the Yoyogi dungeon. The only scenario that makes any sense is that they're buying the orbs from someone else. Therefore, Mizuno says, holding up a single finger, a verification is needed. He looks her directly in the eyes, his expression grim. We need a certain skill orb to verify this theory. The orb, otherworld language. Can you ask them to get one? And miles away, walking down the street, Yoshimura and Azusa remain blissfully unaware that they are about to be caught up in something far bigger and more dangerous than they could ever imagine. The team heads into the meeting, the air thick with anticipation. While his colleagues discuss their rusty English, our protagonist, Miyoshi, feels a knot tightening in his stomach. His senpai is a little concerned about the finer nuances of the language, but Miss Naruse just smiles coolly. Not a problem. And then they walk in. Seated at the table is Simon Gershwin's team legendary explorers, arguably the best in the world. The sheer presence of these veterans is overwhelming, and Miyoshi can't help but feel a little starstruck. Simon extends a hand, introducing himself in perfect English. Miyoshi, not missing a beat, introduces himself and hands over a USB drive containing the orb's data. His senpai watches, impressed. It's a clever tactic when your language skills are shaky. You cut straight to the point and avoid useless chatter. Simon plugs the drive into his laptop, his expression unreadable. Meanwhile, Simon's team is having their own private discussion, and the mood is grim. They're on a wild goose chase, sent by their superiors to find a specific orb with almost no information to go on. Simon is clearly frustrated, calling it a stupid order. They can't just randomly for it, when there are dozens of different monster types that could drop it. In 3 years of dungeon diving, they've only found 2 orbs. Their chances of finding this specific one are basically 0, which is why they've come all the way to Japan as a last resort. But then, one of his teammates pulls up a website on his laptop. The Dungeon Powers Skill Orb Online Auction. He points out the obvious. This Japanese team isn't just finding orbs by luck. They seem to be targeting specific ones, a feat that Simon's team believed to be impossible. And, with that realization, all eyes in the room subtly shift to the unassuming young man sitting across from them. The business part of the meeting begins. Miyoshi confirms the details on a small device, showing them the orb is ready. Confirmed, Miss Naru says. The JDA guarantees this to be a physical resistance orb, with a count less than 60. The moment she says less than 60, Simon's blonde-haired colleague Joshua jolts in his seat. That number clearly means something huge to them. The transfer is initiated, and a staggering amount of money flashes on the screen before being confirmed. Simon slides a briefcase forward, revealing the glowing orb inside. He takes it, a slight smile playing on his lips. Just as the deal concludes and our heroes prepare to leave, Simon speaks up. Please wait a moment. His voice is calm, but it cuts through the room, stopping them in their tracks. He's not letting them go that easily. I just want to talk to you a little bit. The senpai immediately tries to feign ignorance, putting on a clumsy act. Me, English language, only little, he says with a nervous smile, but his escape route is cut off by the blonde Natalie. She leans forward and in flawless Japanese, reveals she grew up in Yokosuka. He's completely cornered. There's no pretending he can't understand now. Resigned, he sits back down. Simon gets right to the point, his smile gone. So, how did you guys do it? He's not asking about business. He's asking about the miracle. He wants to know how they managed to find an orb with a count under 60. The senpai, thinking fast, plays it off as a 1-in-a-million stroke of luck. Oh, I happened to get it about an hour ago, he says with a disarming smile. Coincidentally, Simon's expression says he doesn't buy it for a second. Joshua, trying to find another angle, asks about the ornate case the orb came in. Miyoshi smoothly dodges the question, calling it a trade secret and a stylish perk of being made in Japan. After a few more questions about the Yoyogi dungeon, Simon switches gears. He announces they'll be in Tokyo for a while and would like to dive into Yoyogi themselves. Then comes the loaded request. Can you guys show us around? The senpai breaks into a cold sweat. He's forced to admit the embarrassing truth. They've only been explorers for less than a month and have never been past the first floor. Simon's is intense, analytical. He doesn't look surprised, just confirmed. He coolly retracts the offer, saying he'll find someone else. As they shake hands, seemingly ready to part ways, Simon casually drops one last bombshell. Recently, an explorer in Area 12 took first place in the WDA World Rankings, he says, his eyes locked on our protagonist. Do you guys know each other? The question hangs in the air like a guillotine. The senpai can feel the trap closing. This man's eyes aren't laughing at all, they're dissecting him. He forces a smile and a no way. And they beat a hasty retreat, slamming the door behind them. He lets out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. That was way too close. Simon just watches them go, a predator's smile spreading across his face. He knows, a new day, and a new chapter for the team. It's moving day at their new office. Miss Narus from the JDA arrives with a housewarming gift. But she's not just here for pleasantries. She has a favor to ask. A formal request. They need them to search for a specific orb. The problem is, the request is impossibly vague. They don't know what monster drops it, or even if it's in the Yoyogi dungeon. The only clue is its name, which comes from an otherworld language. Apparently, the only one ever found dropped in a Russian dungeon, and the monster that dropped it was never disclosed. It's a top-secret GDA matter. The senpai immediately puts the pieces together. The dungeon inscriptions were translated by the effect of that skill. Is that right? He asks. The JDA needs to find another orb to verify if the original translation was even accurate. Miyoshi's eyes light up. This sounds incredibly profitable. The senpai starts his analysis. If it's a language skill, they should be looking for intelligent monsters, creatures capable of speech. Miyoshi suggests vampires, but none have been found so far. Looking at a list of monsters from the Russian dungeon, the senpai's finger lands on one. A Goatman-type blood clan shaman. Miyoshi is confused. Why that one? The senpai launches into a brilliant deduction. He explains that monster names and the orbs they drop seem to be based on Earth's myths, and more specifically, our video games. He recalls seeing a slime's potential drops, physical resistance, water magic, hyper recovery. It's the classic starter mob loot table from any JRPG. It's too perfect to be a coincidence. It's as if the creator of the dungeons has a deep, intimate understanding of human culture. He presents 3 theories. 1. It's all a coincidence, which he dismisses as impossible. 2. It's a reflection of some cosmic ideal, like Plato's theory of forms. Or the third, most absurd-sounding but logical possibility. The dungeons are designed by an Earthling. Miyoshi follows his train of thought. Language and magic are often linked in Earth's mythology. Therefore, a monster that drops a language orb would likely be a magic user from a social clan. Goatman fit the bill perfectly. The Blood Clan isn't in Yoyogi, but the Moon Clan is, hidden deep on the 14th floor in an area most explorers avoid. The plan is set. It's a dangerous, multi-day trek. They'll need to go adventure style, a high-risk, high-reward approach for a small party. The senpai is determined. His dream is to secure a lazy life, and this is the fastest way to fund it. After Miss Naruse leaves, Miyoshi voices his concern. They've never even been to the 2nd floor, and now they're planning a dive to the 14th. But the senpai is confident. He just needs to procure one thing first. He rolls 4 glowing orbs onto the table, the fruits of their unique skill. They have a small arsenal now. Storage, hyper recovery, water magic, and more. Their plan is to equip themselves, then sell the rest at the next auction. Considering only 4 orbs were found in Yoyogi publicly last year, their stockpile is going to shatter the market. Miyoshi hands the senpai a storage orb. It's tradition to say, "I'm quitting being human for your first," he jokes. The senpai just smiles. As Miyoshi absorbs his own orb, a strange glow envelops him. He says it feels like his body is being reconstructed. The senpai looks at his own set of orbs, ready to power up. He jokingly wonders if his head will explode from using so many at once. Miyoshi is less concerned about his senpai's head and more about the potential mess. Fortunately, their heads remain intact. Fully equipped with a host of new, powerful skills, they prepare to head out. Their destination, the depths of the dungeon, Appraisal. Fresh off his recent success, Yoshimura Keigo finds himself with a slew of new skills he's eager to test out. He heads to the Yoyogi dungeon, a popular spot for explorers, and is a little taken aback by how clean and modern the lobby is. It feels more like a high-tech corporate building than the entrance to a monster-infested labyrinth. Before he can even get his bearings, he hears a shout and turns to see a group of heavily armored, professional-looking explorers. It's Team Simon, one of the most famous teams in the world. Keigo immediately feels out of place, wondering why such a high-level team would be here so early. It doesn't take long for other explorers to recognize them, whispering in awe about the legendary team. To Keigo's horror, the leader Simon spots him and calls out his name with a huge, friendly grin. Suddenly, all eyes are on Keigo, and the last thing he wanted was to stand out. Simon greets him warmly. A stark contrast to the hardened soldier persona Keigo expected. Simon looks him up and down, baffled by his casual jacket and backpack. "Are you crazy?" he asks, diving into a dungeon dressed like that. Don't you care about your life? Keigo tries to play it cool, explaining that he only sticks to the safest areas where he knows he won't die. But Simon reminds him that in a dungeon, you can never truly know what's going to happen. Just as the unwanted attention couldn't get any worse, another figure in full military camo steps forward, and the mood instantly shifts. Simon's friendly demeanor evaporates. Crap. He mutters, "It's Iori." Keigo immediately recognizes the woman, Second Lieutenant Yori Kimitsu, Japan's undisputed ace and most powerful dungeon explorer. Keigo tries to slip away, but Iori's sharp gaze is already locked onto him. He can feel the tension in the air. These two clearly have some history. Her eyes, cold and analytical, sweep over him, and he feels like he's being scanned for weaknesses. She gets straight to the point, her voice sharp. "Are you going to dive into the dungeon dressed like that?" she asks, echoing Simon's earlier concern but with a much more accusatory tone. She then questions his relationship with Simon, clearly suspicious of their connection. "Are you with D-Powers?" she asks directly. Keigo confirms that he is, but only as a G-rank member, the lowest possible rank. But Iori isn't buying it. Her mind is racing. G-rank explorers are usually nobodies, too shy or embarrassed to even mention their rank. Yet this man speaks confidently with Simon, a world-class explorer. She suspects he's hiding something. She asks when he got his explorer card, and he replies, "Yeah, last month." That simple answer triggers something in her memory, a flash of a shadowy, overwhelmingly powerful figure from a past encounter. She puts the pieces together. His recent registration, his connection to the suddenly successful D-Powers, his unnatural confidence. It wouldn't be strange at all, she thinks, if he had a rare power, something created with a skill orb. Before she can press him further, one of her teammates calls for her. She gives Keigo one last intense stare, a silent promise that this conversation isn't over. "We'll finish our conversation next time," she says before vaulting over a railing to join her squad. Keigo watches her go, a cold sweat running down his back. Getting on the radar of the SDF's top explorer is a complication he absolutely does not need. Deciding he's had enough attention for one day, he turns to leave, thinking he should head home before someone else makes a comment about his outfit. Meanwhile, on the Explorer forums, the digital world is on fire. The topic of discussion, D-Powers 69. The mysterious group that seems to be pulling impossible feats. Users are baffled by their sudden acquisition of multiple rare orbs, including the legendary Hyper Recovery. Finding 4 orbs in a couple of weeks is just impossible, one user writes, a sentiment echoed by many. The speculation runs wild, with some even joking about copy and paste skills. The community is in an uproar, with theories flying about intelligence agencies and spies. The recent sightings of top-tier explorers like Simon and Iori at the Yoyogi dungeon only add fuel to the fire. Back at their headquarters, Keigo and Miyoshi are conducting their own, much quieter, experiments. Keigo asks Miyoshi if he's had a chance to test out the storage skill. Miyoshi grins. "Take a look at this cup," he says, and with a flick of his wrist, the cup vanishes and reappears in his hand with a soft pop. He then explains his findings. He synchronized 2 stopwatches, placed one in storage for a minute, and then pulled it out. The stored watch was lagging behind. He discovered that time inside the storage dimension flows at half the normal speed. Keigo immediately sees the potential. It doubles the shelf life of food, he notes, a simple but incredibly useful perk. The next logical question is about the skill's limits. Keigo reveals he's already done some extensive testing. He tried putting various living things inside. To their surprise, it works on some creatures, but not all. Humans, cats, and dogs are a no-go, but a simple cricket went in without any issue. Keigo lets out a sigh of relief, admitting he was terrified of what might happen if he accidentally stored himself. They theorize that the restriction might be based on a certain level of intelligence or consciousness, preventing sentient beings from being stored. Ultimately, Keigo concludes that the primary limitation isn't size or shape, but mass. Miyoshi, impressed, asks how he figured out the weight limit. Keigo casually explains that he went to a parking lot full of buses in the middle of the night and just tried it. Since most large buses in Japan are one of 3 standard models weighing about 10 tons, it was a perfect test. One bus went in, but a second one wouldn't. This confirmed the weight limit was somewhere between 10 and 20 tons. He then compares it to his vault skill, noting that vault completely stops time while storage only halves it, making each skill useful for different purposes. With a better understanding of their abilities, they begin to plan for their next major dive. Their goal is to hunt shamans, and they'll need to be prepared for a long expedition. Keigo throws out a brilliant, if a bit lazy, idea. Create a comfortable living space inside a container and just store the whole thing. However, he's already taken it a step further. While discussing the logistics of water and supplies, he reveals he already asked Miyoshi to order a custom-built camper van. The camper won't be ready for about a week, so they'll stick to slime hunting for now. They brainstorm the potential problems. Monster attacks could shred a normal camper like paper, and slimes on the lower floors could easily eat through any power cables. Keigo's solution is as practical as it is insane. Reinforce the camper like a vehicle out of Mad Max, and store it inside a custom titanium box for good measure. Next on the list is water. Miyoshi demonstrates his water magic, creating a gush stream of pure, distilled water out of thin air. It's drinkable, but tasteless. For the time being, they decide it's easier to just order 100 cases of mineral water from Amazon. With Keigo's vault, they have enough space to store food for 1,000 days, but they settle on a 7 to 10 day trip to hunt 100 shamans. Fired up by the plan, Keigo immediately dashes out the door to buy as many freshly made bento boxes as he can carry. The next morning, Keigo stumbles downstairs exhausted. He was up until midnight tracking the results of their second orb auction. Miyoshi, ever the diligent researcher, was also up all night, fine-tuning the status measurement code. He asks Keigo if he'd be willing to raise his stats for more testing, promising that the more raw data, the better. Keigo agrees without hesitation. With the millions of yen they're about to make, the cost is no longer an issue. Speaking of funds, Miyoshi pulls up the final auction results. The numbers are staggering, with bids reaching into the billions of yen. The winning bidders are a who's who of the world's top explorers: Seaman from the US, Huang from China, and William from Great Britain. It's clear that Yoyogi is about to become the main stage for the world's elite, all funded by their respective countries' military budgets. But one bid stands out. The Hyper Recovery Orb, sold for an astronomical 5.5 billion yen. The buyer, a private individual with a hidden ID. This is highly unusual. A purchase of this magnitude is almost always made by a major organization or a famous explorer, none of whom have a reason to be anonymous. Miyoshi speculates it could be a wealthy individual with an incurable illness, someone powerful enough to want to stay out of the spotlight. As Keigo listens, he realizes the skill's effects: tirelessness, rapid healing perfectly describe his own condition. A chilling thought crosses his mind. I feel like I'm moving away from being human. Their discussion is cut short by a phone call. The buyer wants to complete the transaction immediately. With only 3 hours to prepare, they rush to the meeting location. There, they're greeted by a representative, a distinguished-looking man named Mr. Ahmed. Behind him, Keigo's the person the orb is for, a frail young woman in a wheelchair, her face pale and partially covered by a mask. The transaction is completed, but Mr. Ahmed has one more, unexpected request. He speaks in a language Keigo can't understand, which Miyoshi identifies as Marathi. The young woman, who introduces herself as Asha, translates for her father. The request is shocking. Her father wants Keigo to take her into the dungeon. Keigo is floored. Taking an injured person into a dungeon is madness, but Asha explains the cruel catch-22 they're in. She doesn't have a dungeon card, and without one she can't use the Hyper Recovery Orb. Her life depends on it. The situation is a nightmare. Getting a D card on such short notice is impossible through normal channels. The de-association agents present are just as baffled, suspecting some kind of elaborate ruse. The core problem is the one unbreakable rule for obtaining a D card: the applicant must defeat a monster, completely unassisted. For a healthy person, it's a simple task using preset traps or weapons. But for Asha, in her condition, it seems impossible. Keigo kneels down and gently asks her what happened. She explains it was an old accident. Her right arm and leg are prosthetic, and she lost her left hand and wrist. Because the injuries are old and have stabilized, healing potions are useless. She tells him her name, Asha, means hope. That single word strikes a chord deep within him. Looking at her, he makes a decision. "Hey Miyoshi," he says, his voice firm. "I want to take her to the dungeon." Miyoshi smirks, teasing him about being generous with beautiful women, but immediately starts making calls to arrange what they'll need. The de-association agents are stunned, revealing that both Indian and British special forces had already refused to attempt such a risky plan. Keigo turns to Asha, giving her a confident thumbs up. "Leave it to us," he says with a reassuring smile. "It's going to be great." For the first time, a genuine laugh escapes her lips, full of relief and newfound hope. Keigo takes control of the situation, explaining to Asha that he'll need her to trust him completely. He then addresses her father and the stunned agents, stating that his business with the de-association is over and that he'll handle things from here. He requests a private meeting room, and without waiting for an answer, begins to wheel Asha away. The door slams shut, leaving the agents to wonder if these two can actually save her. Jembrut. The meeting is tense. Keigo sits across from a wealthy, powerful man and his daughter, Asha, who is confined to a wheelchair. The request is simple on the surface, but a monumental task in reality. Take Asha into a dungeon so she can acquire a D card. Only then can she use the legendary hyper-recovery orb her father spent a fortune on. Keigo doesn't mince words. You do know how difficult that is, right? Mr. Ahmed knows. The desperation is etched onto his face. But after a moment of consideration, Kei gives him the answer he was praying for. We decided to help. Relief washes over the man's face, but it's short-lived. Keigo lays out the conditions. They have a razor-thin time limit, just 22 hours. Absolutely no guarantee of success. Mr. Ahmed is baffled. He thought Keigo's company had some kind of secret preservation tech for orbs, which is why he bought from them in the first place. Keigo just smirks. He smoothly denies the existence of any such technology, claiming the unusually low number of orbs he sold him was pure, simple coincidence. Putting a finger to his lips, he adds, God sometimes works in our favor, right? It's a masterful deflection, leaving Mr. Ahmed speechless. Then, Keigo dangles the hook. He mentions he already has a plan to get another orb soon, and Mr. Ahmed's eyes widen. Of course, it won't be free. The billionaire doesn't care. How much? He demands, ready to write any check. But Keigo's price isn't money. With a calm smile, he makes his request. I get the right to have a meal with the young lady. Your treat, of course. The room falls silent. Both Asha and her father are completely floored by the absurd demand. Mr. Ahmed can only stammer. Is this some sort of Japanese joke? Keigo reassures him it's not, and after a brief, strange conversation about their dietary restrictions, the deal is struck. Mr. Ahmed, still looking dazed, firmly shakes Keigo's hand, placing his daughter's future in this young man's care. The operation begins immediately. Miyoshi informs Keigo that she's rented a conference room for them to prepare. Since a wheelchair is useless in a dungeon, they've acquired a special rescue pack frame for Keigo to carry Asha on his back. The whole thing feels less like a dungeon dive, and more like a covert spy mission. 3 hours later, they meet Asha in the prepared room. The first step is an uncomfortable one. Keigo instructs her to remove all of her clothes, including her prosthetics. Seeing her blush, he decides it's a conversation better left to Miyoshi and tactfully exits the room. At the dungeon entrance, Keigo flexes his authority, ordering the staff to close the entrance for 5 minutes after they go in, a serious abuse of power to ensure they aren't followed. Miyoshi confirms the coast is clear. No foreign agents have been spotted recently. With everything set, Keigo hoists Asha onto the carrier, and they step into the dungeon. Inside, the air is damp and alien. Asha looks around, taking in the strange environment for the first time. Keigo lays out a mat and explains the bizarre process for acquiring a D card here. She has to lie down, use a straw to suck up liquid from a nearby slime, and then spit it back at the creature. He helps her down and fits a pair of protective goggles over her eyes. She lies on her stomach, leans in close, and takes a deep breath. With a sharp exhale, she shoots the liquid back at the slime. There's a soft plop, and where the liquid hits, a tiny glass-like bead solidifies. Asha is stunned. Keigo grins, proudly calling his discovery alien drool. The final step, he explains, is to smash that core with her boot. As she raises her foot to stomp on it, Miyoshi suddenly calls out, "Senpai, someone's coming." There's no time to hide. Once again, Keigo yells. Asha stomps down hard, shattering the bead. In a flash of light, a sleek, black card materializes in her hand. It's her D card. Congrats, Keigo says with a warm smile. Tears well up in Asha's eyes. It's real. Now I can use the orb, she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. Overcome with gratitude, she throws her arms around Keigo, thanking him again and again. Just then, the other explorers round the corner. Keigo calmly tells them they were just leaving and deflects their offer of help. As they walk away, Miyoshi asks if he thinks they'll be followed. Most likely, he replies, ever cautious. In a safer location, Asha holds the hyper-recovery orb in her hands. Keigo suggests she use it now, inside the dungeon, where its effects are said to be amplified. She crushes it, and an explosion of light and energy washes over her. What follows is unexpected. Asha begins to let out a series of moans and cries, so intense and suggestive that Keigo's face turns beet red. It sounds so dangerously misleading that Miyoshi has to pull him aside while he tries not to die from secondhand embarrassment. The light finally fades, and the prosthetic covering her eye falls to the ground. Asha collapses, completely drained, into Keigo's arms. He and Miyoshi stare in stunned silence. She slowly opens her eyes, both of them. Orbs are amazing, she breathes. Seeing her exhaustion, Keigo decides the pack frame is no longer needed. He gently lifts her into his arms and carries her out. As he walks, he realizes he's not even tired. The thought of how monstrously strong he's becoming is more than a little unsettling. The reunion is everything they'd hoped for. Asha, walking on her own 2 feet, runs to her father. He holds her, overcome with joy and disbelief. Keigo, Miyoshi and Naruse watch the beautiful moment, their mission a resounding success. Later, during the debrief, Naruse reveals that 2 British agents showed up just moments after they left the dungeon, clearly tailing them. The discussion then shifts to the orb's effect. Naruse asks for a description for the WDA database, but Keigo hesitates. If the world found out this orb could trigger a full-body regeneration, the greed and chaos would be catastrophic. He decides it's best not to publish the truth. Miyoshi tries to cover, saying it just helps with fatigue, but Naruse quickly deduces that Miyoshi must have used one too, meaning both she and Keigo now possess unknown skills. Keigo steps in, confirming they need to be patient and keep this under wraps. He looks at Asha's new D card. The skill Hyper Recovery is listed, but it's grayed out and bracketed, indicating it's currently unusable. A dark thought crosses his mind. If any major power found out about this, they wouldn't hesitate to kidnap Asha and chop her up for science to figure out how it works. The weight of their secret begins to settle in. The next morning, Keigo wakes up late. Still recovering from the previous day's whirlwind of events, Miyoshi explains that Mr. Ahmed had dragged them out for a wild celebration in Ginza to thank them. Today's schedule is much simpler, 3 orb deliveries. After a quick check-in on Miyoshi's programming work, which is complete gibberish to Keigo, they head out. Their first client is the world's 4th-ranked explorer, Mr. Huang, an impatient man who uses the orb on the spot and leaves without a word. Next is Simon, a top-tier explorer who seems to know a little too much about their activities. He cryptically remarks that Yoyogi Dungeon is a convenient battleground for global intelligence agencies before departing. Their final appointment is with the British client, William. Keigo handles the meeting in flawless English. William is a stone-faced military officer from an elite unit called the DCU. During the transaction, Keigo casually mentions that his orb stock is now less than 60. The butler accompanying William visibly twitches. It was a targeted message, and it hit its mark. Back in their office, the team is stunned by Keigo's audacity. Was that a declaration of war? Miyoshi asks, horrified. But Keigo just smiles, claiming to be an idle pacifist. Suddenly, the door flies open. It's Asha, who rushes in and throws her arms around a bewildered Keigo. The promise, she says, her eyes sparkling. I'm here to carry it out. Keigo is utterly lost. She reminds him of his reward. A meal with her. He had said it to lighten the mood, but she took it as a serious invitation, and she's come to deliver it herself. Go, charmed, accepts. Miyoshi, ever curious, peeks at the invitation card. His eyes go wide with shock. Senpai, isn't this Sushi Naito? It's a legendary sushi restaurant, one of only 3 in Tokyo, with 3 Michelin stars. And the reservation is for a Sunday a day. They are always closed. The sheer influence of Mr. Ahmed is staggering. He made one of the world's most exclusive restaurants open on their day off just for them. As Miyoshi processes the sheer absurdity of it all, the team starts planning who else to invite, their strange and exciting new partnership solidifying. We open on a sophisticated party, and Yoshimura is deep in conversation with Miyoshi's father, a man who clearly commands respect. He's being thanked, called a benefactor to their family, which is some seriously high praise. Yoshimura, ever humble, tries to deflect, giving credit to Miss Naruse from the JDA for her help behind the scenes. The man's eyes drift over to a group of elegant women, and he asks who they are. Yoshimura introduces the first as Naruse Midori, Miss Naruse's younger sister, who runs a medical equipment company they work with. The second is an up-and-coming model, Mitsurugi Haruka. She greets them, a bit flustered, and tries her hand at English, congratulating Yoshimura. In a cute slip-up, she asks he's Mr. Yoshimura's girlfriend, and he just plays along, finding the whole thing charming. The reason Mitsurugi is even here goes back to that morning. Yoshimura was just walking along when someone suddenly grabbed him from behind. He's completely startled, instincts on high alert. But then he sees the eyes over the face mask and recognizes her. It's Mitsurugi, and she's absolutely beaming. I got accepted, she shouts, practically vibrating with excitement. Accepted for what? He wonders. She'd mentioned a modeling competition before. Noticing they're drawing a crowd, they quickly decide to duck into a nearby cafe to talk properly. Once inside, Mitsurugi pulls off her disguise with a sigh of relief. As they chat, Yoshimura observes her, noticing a new refinement and grace in her movements. He can't help but wonder if her attribute scores have gone up. As if reading his mind, she slides her D card across the table. He picks it up, and his eyes widen. In just 6 weeks of diving and only on the first floor, she's already broken into the top 1,000 in the rankings. This is unheard of. He mentally crunches the numbers, looking at a calendar she's kept. She's been grinding slimes with a terrifying dedication, averaging over 100 a day for nearly 10 hours straight. The sheer effort is staggering. He'd killed a few thousand himself but earned barely anything compared to her. He realizes that in just 42 days she's earned almost 100 status points. He tells her that while his tips might have helped, this result is all because of her own relentless hard work. He imagines her stats, thinking that if she poured all those points into agility and dexterity, she'd practically be a superhuman, able to control her body down to the millimeter. He offers her a sincere congratulations, and her eyes well up with tears, overwhelmed by the validation. Suddenly, she grabs his hands across the table, startling him. She asks about Saito. Yoshimura explains that she's a big star now, and they don't dive together much anymore. He's been going in alone. Mitsurugi points out how dangerous that is and, with a hopeful look, asks if he'd mind if she joined him sometimes. Yoshimura considers it. If Saito has been diving with the same intensity as Mitsurugi, her stats would be monstrous by now, making her no longer a normal person. Mitsurugi then gives him a serious warning. D cards are extremely personal, something you only show to people you're incredibly close to, like lovers. But Yoshimura takes it a step further. No, he says, his expression hardening. It's best not to, if possible, even to them. He's thinking of his own absurdly high stats. He then subtly probes, mentioning the mysterious new number 1 ranker in Area 12. Mitsurugi's eyes widen as the pieces seem to click into place. After a moment of silence, she suggests they exchange contact info, saying her friend Ryoko would insist on it. He agrees, and they swap details on their phones. Before they part, he invites her to a small work-related party later that day, an invitation she happily accepts. Back in the present at the party, we see how the day unfolded. After defeating a few more slimes to get the hyper-recovery orb, he had picked up Mitsurugi. He'd brought a gift for her, but he's a bit bummed that Saito couldn't make it. Later, he finds Asha and presents her with a gift to celebrate her recovery. A pair of stunning, 2 million yen diamond earrings. Miyoshi's sister is a master at profiling, apparently. There's just one problem: Asha's ears aren't pierced. Yoshimura smiles, having anticipated this. He reveals a matching pendant. He helps her put it on, and she looks absolutely radiant. After a wonderful dinner, it's time for goodbyes. In a sudden, heartfelt moment, Asha embraces him tightly, a silent promise of reunion in her eyes. Someday again, she whispers. Miyoshi's father gives Yoshimura's hand a firm, meaningful squeeze, telling him to call if he ever needs anything. As they get into the car, Yoshimura hands Mitsurugi her gift, a beautiful pair of pearl earrings to celebrate her audition success. She's so touched she gasps, covering her mouth. Then, on impulse, she leans out the window and gives him a quick kiss on the cheek. The driver jokes about him ending up in a tabloid, but Yoshimura just shrugs it off. Elsewhere, Naru's Midori complains to her friend about how everyone at dinner was fawning over Kigo like he was some kind of celebrity. The very next day, Yoshimura and Miyoshi are at Naru's secret lab, ready for the next phase of their plan. Naru's is practically buzzing with energy, ecstatic to finally get a chance to discover the secrets of aura. After 43 tests, she's ready to get serious. Yoshimura is sealed in a testing pod. He reflects on his own stats. Even with thousands of kills, his point gain was minimal. He estimates top explorers average maybe 60 points a year. His own numbers are already far beyond that. He knows deeper floors grant more experience. But for now, the plan is to establish a baseline. They decide to raise one attribute at a time to measure the effects precisely. But as he's about to max out his strength, he notices something incredible: a minus button. He can actually decrease his stats. A light bulb goes off in his head. This isn't just about getting stronger, it's about control. He could restrict his power to disguise himself or train under specific conditions. It's a game-changing discovery. The next 5 hours are a blur as he meticulously raises every single attribute to a perfect 100. After the grueling session, Miyoshi's sister hands him a drink. Distracted, he takes it and crunch, the cup implodes in his hand. He stares at the shattered remains, shocked by his own unintentional force. He rushes to a sink and tests his strength on a coin, bending the metal with a simple squeeze. The raw power is terrifying. He realizes now why top players must seem so calm. They've had to go through a long period of adjustment just to function in daily life without breaking everything they touch. A few days later, Miyoshi pulls up with their new ride, an armored camper van. It's time. They're finally ready to tackle the deeper floors of Yoyogi. Geared up in tactical equipment, they look like soldiers heading into a war zone. Their mission: find a mysterious orb on the 14th floor. This is no longer a game. They skip the first floor, heading straight for the second. Their plan is methodical: clear each level, map it with their helmet-mounted depth sensors, and hunt monsters to see what orbs they carry. For gear, they've gone for practicality. Yoshimura carries a bulletproof mini-shield, relying on his now superhuman vitality to tank hits. Their weapons are simple but deadly: carbon steel tomahawks, and iron balls, which Miyoshi can launch directly from his storage with startling speed. As they enter, they meet another diver who kindly gives them tips, warning them that the 5th floor is the true test that separates the pros from the amateurs. Yoshimura marvels at how helpful people are, a stark contrast to the cutthroat world of gaming. They step onto the 2nd floor, and the scenery is bizarre. It's an open field under a sky, but the stairs they just came down from are sitting inexplicably on the side of a hill. After checking the map, Yoshimura decides it's time for a field test. He resets his status, putting 100 points into every attribute. Then, with a single push, he explodes forward in a blur of motion, leaving Miyoshi completely in the dust. From Yoshimura's perspective, the world slows down. His body feels weightless, his perception is razor-sharp, and every movement is effortless. The feeling is absolutely intoxicating. Miyoshi snaps him out of it, yelling that he's moving way too fast. Yoshimura sheepishly apologizes, realizing he needs to rein it in. Soon, they spot their first target, a lone goblin. Yoshimura summons an iron ball into his hand. With a casual flick of his wrist, the ball shoots forward and strikes the goblin with explosive force, obliterating it instantly. Miyoshi can only stare in awe. This, Yoshimura thinks to himself, is the power of having all attributes at 100. He feels like he could take on anyone. They find another goblin, and this time he uses magic, firing a water lance that pierces it just as easily. The best part? The spell barely cost him any mana. This is going to be a breeze. But he quickly notices the EXP gain from goblins is already dropping to almost nothing. After taking out his 91st goblin, a system message appears. He's defeated 100 monsters in total, and he can now select a new skill orb. He puts it together instantly. The counter is cumulative across all monster types, not just one. This is a massive exploit. He can farm 99 weaklings, then hunt a specific boss for its rare orb drop. This changes everything. The list of available orbs appears, and some of them have seriously ominous names like Early Birth and Early Death. Miyoshi can't see the screen and asks him to read them out. They wonder why no one has discovered this before, and Miyoshi theorizes that since goblins give poor EXP and no item drops, high-level players ignore them entirely. They do have treasure chests, but finding a goblin den is a challenge in itself. Miyoshi jokes that goblin hunting isn't exactly a great date idea, and Yoshimura's awkward reaction gives away his recent outing with Mitsurugi. Yoshimura analyzes the list, thinking back to some research. The early birth orb was tested on pigs, shortening their gestation period at the cost of the parent's health. Early death sounds like something for an assassin. He decides to play it safe for now, selecting boosted growth. After killing a few more monsters and a wolf, he hits the 100-kill mark again. A new list appears with even stranger options, including exchange alchemy. It sounds like a fable with a hidden, dangerous price. Unwilling to risk it, he chooses the most practical and safe-sounding skill: detect life. Having figured out the orb farming mechanic, they decide to press on to the 5th floor. But first lunch. Miyoshi grins and unveils Dolly, their mobile RV base. It's a custom Varden camper, reinforced with titanium plates, loaded with surveillance gear, and running on expensive fuel cells. They eat and prepare for the next leg of the journey. The 5th floor is where the real dungeon begins, where boars and orcs appear. Even with their overpowered skills, they know they can't let their guard down. But as the narrator ominously foreshadows, it was on that very floor that they would face an unexpected, brutal baptism into the true nature of the dungeon. First, the chapter opens on a scene of pure chaos. A young woman, her face a mask of terror, desperately clutches a wounded man as bodies of slain beasts lie scattered around them. Out of the carnage steps our hero Yoshimura, his tactical gear pristine in the surrounding mess. He cuts straight to the point, asking the distraught woman, "Are you able to move?" She can only stare back, completely bewildered by the sudden turn of events. But to understand how they got here, we need to rewind a few hours. Earlier that day, after a quick lunch, Yoshimura and Miyoshi decided to push forward into the 5th level of the dungeon. They arrive at the entrance, geared up for a serious expedition, only to realize they stick out like a sore thumb. Yoshimura can't help but crack a wry smile. Their professional equipment is drawing stares from every other explorer in the area. Miyoshi points out that the 5th level is where stronger monsters like orcs and boars start appearing. So you don't typically see rookies in basic gear here. Feeling the weight of all the attention, they decide to slip away from the crowds and find a more secluded spot. As they venture deeper into the forest-like environment, Miyoshi gives a tactical breakdown of the upcoming levels. Levels 5 through 8 are all forest terrain, but the monster density increases sharply. Orcs, wolves and wild boar are common, with church grims and night wolves appearing after sundown. He continues, explaining that level 9 is home to ogres and colonial worms, while the 10th floor is a hellscape of undead and lava flows, a massive difficulty spike that forces most teams to camp on the 8th floor before attempting it. The mention of colonial worms makes Yoshimura visibly cringe. He remembers Miyoshi showing him an old horror flick featuring giant, swarming worms, and the image is still burned into his brain. Shaking off the creepy memory, they shift their focus back to the immediate threat, the church grims. These hellhound-like creatures are a major roadblock. They patrol the upper forest levels at night, and weirdly enough, sometimes drop a red liquid that looks exactly like a rare assimilation medicine. Miyoshi explains the tragic story of its discovery. Years ago, the first explorers on the 10th floor, a vast graveyard teeming with zombies, found themselves in a bind. A team member got bitten, and in their panic they used one of the fake potions dropped by a church grim to try and heal him. Of course, it did nothing. The wound festered, and the man began to turn, forcing the team to make a terrible choice. It was only later that they discovered the real assimilation medicine, which renders the user invisible to low-level undead. This medicine allows safe passage through the 10th floor, and the only way to get it is by hunting the church grims on the floors below. It's a dangerous but necessary grind for high-level explorers. To avoid all that hassle and the prying eyes of other explorers, they need a place to pull out their mobile base dolly. They soon find the perfect spot. A small clearing sectioned off by a creek. Yoshimura sizes it up about 4 meters wide, an easy obstacle for him. He casually scoops Miyoshi up and leaps across with barely any effort, a testament to his ridiculously high stats. Miyoshi is stunned, remarking that even someone as light as him should feel heavy, but Yoshimura barely noticed. They find a good clearing and Miyoshi, trying to be clever, quotes a proverb about a pheasant not crying if it hadn't been shot. Jorah just gives him a deadpan look. Wrong word, he says. Completely unimpressed. With the area secured, he summons Dolly, their heavily armored camper. Inside, they relax for a moment. The monitors show a peaceful forest scene, a stark contrast to the dangers lurking just outside the titanium walls. While Miyoshi hops in the shower, Yoshimura starts to eat. Suddenly, the calm is shattered. Faint screams and horrifying howls pierce the air. They immediately turn up the external microphones and listen in horror to the sounds of a brutal attack. Miyoshi, panicked, asks what they should do. Yoshimura's expression hardens. Knowing what is right and not doing it is cowardice, he says, a quiet determination in his voice. He grabs his earpiece, telling Miyoshi to guide him from the camper. In a flash, he's out the door, leaping over the creek and sprinting towards the chaos. Miyoshi guides him via drone, spotting a strange black fog ahead. Yoshimura doesn't hesitate, pushing straight through the mist. On the other side is a massacre. A party of explorers is being torn apart by a pack of shadowy beasts. The creatures are jet black, with glowing red eyes church grims. But something is wrong. The survivors are panicking, screaming that the grims shouldn't be in packs and that they only come out on the 8th floor. They mutter about a black mist and something called a barghest. In a moment of pure cowardice, the party's leader makes a call. Leave Shota behind. The injured man's sister, Michiro, refuses to abandon him. The leader argues that with 9 hellhounds and a barghest on the loose, they have no chance. He turns and flees, leaving the siblings to their fate. But Michiro isn't helpless. She whips out a bow and with grim resolve, begins firing into the pack, skillfully taking down 2 of the beasts in quick succession. And that's when Yoshimura arrives, bringing us back to where we started. He sighs internally, wondering what happened to his supposedly high luck stat. He tells Michiro to get her brother and run towards the creek he just crossed. When she hesitates, he tells her flatly, "I can help. You'll just be in the way." The harsh words snap her into action. She gives her brother what looks like an inhaler, hauls him to his feet, and runs as Yoshimura commands. With the civilians clear, Yoshimura faces the pack alone. The hellhounds charge, but he's more than ready. He summons 2 glowing, circular shields of pure energy and meets their assault head-on, effortlessly shattering the beasts into particles of light. He radios Miyoshi, telling him to record everything. He's figured it out. According to folklore, barghests can't cross running water. If he can hold them here, the siblings should be safe. Just then, Miyoshi spots something massive moving on the drone's camera. Yoshimura hears the ominous rattle of chains, and then, silence. Suddenly, the ground erupts with magical circles, and more hounds are summoned from the earth. Resummoned? Yoshimura thinks, a grin spreading across his face. Could this be my lucky day? He quickly assesses the situation. This must be the barghest's ability. To get to the boss, he has to clear out its minions first. What follows is a masterclass in monster slaying. Wielding his hammer and shields, Yoshimura becomes a whirlwind of destruction, systematically obliterating the summoned hounds while counting them down. Once the last one falls, the ground trembles. A hulking beast emerges from the shadows, a gargantuan, horned wolf shackled by thick chains, but just as he prepares to fight it, the Barghest howls and summons 5 more hounds. Yoshimura isn't fazed. With his agility maxed out, the giant's attacks seem to move in slow motion. He effortlessly dodges and blocks the lashing chains, clears out the new wave of summons, and finds his opening. He unleashes a powerful blast of energy from his palm, striking the Barghest square in the head. The beast staggers and collapses. But the fight isn't over. The orb selection window hasn't appeared. He realizes he must have missed a step. As he turns to the remaining hounds, the Barghest lurches back to life, lunging at him. He reacts instantly, smashing it one last time. This time it works. The list of rewards finally pops up. He lets out a sigh of relief, glad he didn't miss his chance at a rare drop. And what a drop it is. 2 skill orbs appear on the list. Otherworld language and darkness magic. Stunned for a moment, he remembers the stragglers and quickly cleans them up. As the last one dissolves, the black fog lifts. A glowing orb materializes in front of him. A physical drop from the boss. It's the Otherworld language skill. Yoshimura can't help but smile. I apologize, look, he mutters to his luck stat. You're doing your job just fine. Over the comms, Miyoshi is losing his mind. He saw the drop list and knows that the language skill has a 1 in 1,000 drop rate, likely only from special boss monsters. He passionately urges Yoshimura to choose it, arguing that if such a rare and powerful skill were in the hands of only different people, it would inevitably lead to conflict. Yoshimura agrees. Dark magic is probably tied to the Barghest summoning, which isn't unheard of. He selects Otherworld language, and to his astonishment, a second orb pops out. He got both of them. As if that wasn't enough, he notices the ground is littered with items. This is new. He's never received physical material drops before. As he picks them up, their names appear: heal potions, cure potions, and a variety of monster parts. Then he sees it. A horn and a magic crystal, from a Hound of Hecate. He realizes this wasn't just a Barghest from English folklore, it was a named beast from Greek mythology. The implications are staggering. Overwhelmed, he simply gathers everything and stores it in his vault, his mind racing. The dust settles in the forest of the Yoyogi dungeon, and our hero Yoshimura finds himself in a strange standoff. A young woman, an archer, looks down at him with concern, asking if he's okay. Yoshimura, still processing the fight, assures her he's fine, though the scene looks anything but. Nearby, her companion lies on the ground, bleeding heavily. She's done her best to stop the bleeding, but it's not enough. Yoshimura assesses the situation with a grim expression. That wound is from a hellhound, a nasty gash that tore through the man's arm. A standard first aid kit isn't going to cut it. This injury is far too severe. The woman looks on, her face a mask of desperation. There's no other choice. Sorry, Miyoshi, Yoshimura murmurs to himself, reaching into his inventory. He pulls out a small, glowing vial and offers it to her. Her eyes widen in disbelief. It's a heal potion, but the label sends a shockwave through her. It's a rank 5 potion. Even Yoshimura does a double take. He hadn't even checked the rank of the potion when he got it as a drop. Rank 5? Just how potent is that? He pushes the thought aside. He might be in real trouble if you don't use it quickly, he urges. Snapping out of her shock, she takes the vial, her voice trembling with gratitude. Thank you very much, she says. I'll be sure to pay you back. She carefully brings the potion to the injured man's lips. Yoshimura watches, thinking to himself that dungeon items are truly on another level. A sudden wave of drowsiness hits him, a familiar side effect of his hyper-recovery skill kicking in when he's not in immediate danger. The effects of the potion are instantaneous and nothing short of miraculous. A brilliant light envelops the man's wounded arm. The flesh and bones, once shattered and torn, begin to weave themselves back together, reforming into a perfectly healthy limb right before their eyes. The man sits up, staring at his arm in utter disbelief. Overcome with relief, the woman throws her arms around him. Shota, she cries. Ah, so they're siblings, not a couple, but the reunion is cut short. The man, Shota, gets to his feet, a strange look on his face. He clenches his newly healed fist, his expression twisting from shock to pure anger. A rank 5 heal potion, he shouts, glaring at Yoshimura. I didn't ask for your help. I wasn't even hurt that badly. His sister is stunned, trying to calm him down, but he's already on a roll. He points an accusing finger at Yoshimura. What are you saying? There's no evidence he even used a potion, he yells, completely ignoring the fact he was moments from bleeding out. Then comes the truly bizarre accusation. This lewd old man is trying to put you in his debt with a high-rank potion. You're being deceived. Yoshimura is just speechless. The sheer audacity is almost impressive. Even Buddha would be surprised by this logic. Finally, Yoshimura has had enough. He calmly taps the side of his helmet. I'm still recording, by the way, he says, his voice flat. Okay, that's enough. He tells them to head for the stairs where other teams are camped for the night. Shota scoffs, saying their other teammates, Sakai and Toma, already ran off. They used you and your sibling as bait and ran away. Yoshimura states plainly, cutting through the boy's denial. The sister's face falls. She knows he's telling the truth. As they prepare to leave, the sister, Eri Mishiro, stops him. She insists on repaying him, handing him a business card with her contact information. Yoshimura is still a little annoyed at being called a lewd old man, but he can tell she's a person, just stuck with a difficult brother. He tries to wave it off, but she insists, so he takes the card. Back at their mobile base, Miyoshi is buzzing with excitement. Senpai, that was so fun and interesting. Yoshimura is just exhausted. The stream felt more like an action movie than a dungeon dive. All he wants is a shower and bed. But Miyoshi has a question. By the way, how much does a rank 5 heal potion cost? Yoshimura has no idea. Miyoshi explains that a basic, rank potion can go for between 1 and 2 million yen. Miyoshi then pulls up a chart breaking down the potion ranks. Rank 1 handles simple fractures. Ranks 2 through 4 can handle increasingly severe injuries, like reattaching severed parts. But rank 5, it can restore the body even if half of it is destroyed. The prices multiply with each rank, making a rank 5 potion worth an astronomical sum. We're talking over 120 million yen. Suddenly, Shota's bizarre accusation makes a twisted sort of sense. He wasn't just being ungrateful. He thought Yoshimura was trying to trap his sister with a life-altering debt. As they sift through the day's loot, Miyoshi points out that Yoshimura's drop rate seems abnormally high. Then, Yoshimura pulls out another vial. It's a cure potion, rank 7. Miyoshi freezes. Senpai, how are you so calm? He asks, his voice a whisper. A potion of this rank is the stuff of legends. It's been reported to cure terminal illnesses like leukemia and even dementia. Its market value isn't just high, it's practically priceless, estimated at well over 4 billion yen, or around 30 million US dollars. The value is so staggering because top explorers are considered national assets. For a country, spending 5 billion yen to save a hero who protects the nation is a small price to pay, less than the cost of a single fighter jet. Miyoshi notes that selling it would be a nightmare, with middlemen taking a huge cut. They turn to the other materials: fangs, horns, hides, and magic crystals. Miyoshi explains that the crystals are a source of immense, clean energy, sometimes called clean plutonium. It's a resource that could fundamentally change the world and end the reliance on fossil fuels. They also found a monster's tongue and a single, high-quality barrier orb. Miyoshi wonders if the tongue is for eating, which sends Yoshimura down a dark path. If dungeon food can enhance a person's abilities, it would create an arms race, making humanity even more dependent on these mysterious labyrinths. He starts to question everything. If the dungeons appeared out of nowhere, couldn't they just as easily vanish? But the most significant find is the one they were hired for: the Otherworld language orb. It's absurdly rare, and its value is immeasurable. Selling it would spark a bidding war between global superpowers. Yet, the orb's purpose, inscription magic, is a complete mystery. The drop rate is so low it feels intentional, as if the orb wants to be found. But the question is, by whom? Yoshimura leans back, deep in thought. The dungeon's rules, its rewards, they all feel strangely tailored to human culture, almost like an addictive drug. The whole situation is so bizarre, he starts to think that maybe their world really is just a simulation, a controlled environment like the Matrix. He decides to hit the shower, leaving Miyoshi to secure the mountain of invaluable data they've just collected. They discuss security upgrades, laser eavesdropping protection, private security firms. Yoshimura feels like he's on a runaway train with no brakes. Maybe we should build a safe room, he half jokes. At least we could stow the important stuff and run. Miyoshi asks if he'd come back to save him. No, Yoshimura replies instantly. Miyoshi just smiles. That blunt honesty is what makes his senpai so wonderful. The next day, they emerge from the dungeon. Yoshimura knows he has to report their findings to Miss Naruse from the JDA. Just as he thinks it, his phone rings. It's her, and she has shocking news. He meets her near the JDA headquarters. She's on edge, insisting they walk while they talk to avoid being overheard. She's floored that they found a lead on the orb in a single day. How did they do it? What monster dropped it? Yoshimura just smiles. By relying on luck, he says coolly. The conversation shifts to the big question. What do they do if they actually find the orb? The potential payout is over $1 billion, but it's a decision far above his pay grade. So for now, he tells her, you'll just have to offer up a prayer for me. Naruse takes this information straight to her superior. He's highly skeptical. A G-rank rookie and his partner succeeding where global agencies have failed for months. It sounds like a fantasy. He pulls up Yoshimura's file, a rookie with less than 2 months of experience. There's clearly more to him than what's on paper. The boss sees the enormous risk. If a small-time party like theirs tries to auction an item of that magnitude, they'll be crushed by the major powers vying for it. He grills Naruse, who requested this mission in the first place. The potential profit is in the tens of billions. But without clear instructions, their hands are tied. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But one wrong move could bring disaster. They agree to keep the matter between them and decide on a time frame. He tells her he'll have an answer by Monday. On Saturday, Yoshimura makes good on another promise. He heads into the dungeon to help Miss Mitsurugi train. He decides to test out his new Detect Life orb, which gives him a passive radar for nearby life forms. They decide to go for a new record. What follows is a blur of hyper-efficient slime hunting. With Yoshimura pinpointing targets, they move with incredible speed, not even stopping for lunch. In 6 hours, Mitsurugi has gained a massive amount of experience and Yoshimura has personally tagged over 155 slimes. Mitsurugi is exhausted but ecstatic. "Mr. Yoshimura, you're amazing. Finding them that quickly has to be a world record." He brushes it off as luck, but his stomach growls loudly, betraying him. They realize they've worked straight through lunch and decide to grab a bite at the dungeon cafe. Back at the office, Miyoshi has been crunching numbers on their drop rates. The sample size is too small for a definitive conclusion, but he estimates the magic crystal drop rate at around 25%. They'll need more data, preferably from the hellhounds on the 5th floor. Yoshimura then casually mentions his bank account. With his 1% cut of the company's earnings, his balance has already hit 200 million yen. To celebrate, they decide to go to a fancy French restaurant. Miyoshi teases him about his date with Mitsurugi on Sunday, but Yoshimura clarifies it's not a date and that he's treating both of them. He's already made a reservation for 3. When Sunday arrives, they head to the restaurant. Waiting for them is Miss Mitsurugi and another familiar face from their old company, Miss Saito. Back at the office, Saito is reflecting on how she ended up here. She admits that at first, joining Haru in the dungeon wasn't really a choice. It was more of a necessity. But after just 2 weeks of hunting, something changed. She found herself auditioning for a minor role and absolutely nailing it. It was like the dungeon had unlocked a part of her brain. Suddenly she could recall scripts she'd only read once, and her body moved exactly how she wanted it to. It was a shocking but welcome side effect. Keigo confirms her suspicions, noting that the dungeon seems to have a positive effect on one's intelligence. For Saito, this is just the beginning. She's tired of supporting roles, she wants to be the star and she wants it now. With a sudden intensity, she leans in close to Keigo, her voice dropping to a serious whisper. Then she grabs his leg, her grip surprisingly firm, and says, "Become my angel." Keigo is completely thrown. He can only think one thing. Is this some kind of honey trap? Before he can even process the situation, Mitsurugi yanks Saito away. She clarifies that Saito is talking about business, not romance. In the world of finance, an angel is an investor. Mitsurugi then cuts to the heart of it, asking if an ordinary guy, like Keigo, even has the kind of money to invest in an aspiring actress. Keigo just sips his drink, a faint smile on his face. He remembers the incredibly expensive pearl earrings he gifted his apprentices without a second thought, but decides to keep that to himself. Changing the subject, he invites Mitsurugi to dinner as a thank you and extends the invitation to Saito as well. Saito is absolutely thrilled, promising to go. Then, Keigo casually mentions that Miyoshi will be coming too. Saito's bright expression flickers for just a moment, a subtle change that Mitsurugi catches immediately. Keigo, however, seems completely oblivious. When Mitsurugi asks if something is wrong with Miyoshi joining, Saito quickly plasters on a smile and agrees to go, especially since it's Keigo's treat. Later, the two women have a private chat about Keigo. Mitsurugi thinks he'd be a good catch, but Saito disagrees, labeling him an herbivore, a guy who seems uninterested in dating. She finds it odd that he's seemingly rich and good-looking but doesn't seem to cheat. Keigo overhears this and can't help but feel a little dejected. He laments that he's just a guy who hasn't had the opportunity. To steer the conversation away from his love life, he suggests they go hunt some goblins. Inside the dungeon, Keigo prepares them for the next hunt. He asks if they're comfortable fighting humanoid monsters like goblins. When they seem ready to just punch them, he stops them, handing over 2 high-tech compound bows instead. Mitsurugi has some archery experience, but this kind of bow is new to her. Keigo assures them it's fine. He explains that their stats have grown strong from fighting slimes on the 1st floor, so they should be able to handle the bows with a little practice. Saito, it turns out, is a natural. She had done some research on bows after seeing Mishiro use one, and her form is perfect. Keigo uses his detect life skill, pinpointing a lone goblin in a nearby cave. He gives Saito the signal. She draws the string, aims, and lets the arrow fly. It's a perfect shot, striking the goblin right in the head. Keigo congratulates her. Saito feels fine. The distance of the kill keeps it from being too personal. With the warm-up done, Keigo uses his detection skill again, this time revealing a massive nest. He points towards a corner of the cave system. There's a group about 20 of them over there. He tells them not to worry, and to just focus on shooting calmly. Following his lead, they begin raining arrows down on the goblin nest. The creatures fall one after another, caught completely by surprise. When a few of the more aggressive goblins manage to break through the volley and get too close, Keigo calmly raises a hand. A shimmering water lance materializes and pierces through the monster instantly. He coolly tells the girls to ignore the stragglers and focus on the ones in the back. The hunt is a massive success. Both Saito and Mitsurugi look invigorated, with Saito even joking that her new hobby is archery. Now for the reward. Keigo explains that goblin dens usually hide a treasure box under a rock lid. As they search, Saito taps on a section of the cave wall and notices it sounds hollow. That's the spot. Mitsurugi notes that her own stats aren't high enough to even attempt lifting the stone lid. Keigo, however, lifts the massive slab of rock with zero effort, revealing the hidden cache. Inside, they find 2 small vials. They've hit the jackpot. Keigo explains that these are incredibly rare healing potions, each worth a fortune. He tells the girls they can have them, one for each of his professions, a little talisman for the actress and the researcher. He even offers to have them made into pendants, a trophy for their first successful group hunt. They only manage to find one more potion that morning, but everyone is in high spirits. Later that evening, they all go out for a fancy dinner. The girls are enjoying the delicious food and playfully teasing Keigo. He feels a little overwhelmed by all the attention, and even more so when he remembers he's the one paying for this expensive meal. True to his word, Keigo has the potions made into simple, elegant pendants and gives one to each of them. The next day, it's back to business. Keigo sits down with Miyoshi to outline his big idea, the Miyoshi level-up plan. Miyoshi's stats are dangerously low, especially his resistances. A single powerful magic attack could instantly kill him. To fix this, Keigo plans to power level him on the 10th floor. Miyoshi is, understandably, terrified. He knows that trying to level up the way Mitsurugi did by tanking hits at the dungeon entrance would be suicide for him. Keigo lays out the targets, 2 monsters on the 10th floor, the Barghest and the Manhwa. He suspects the Barghests might have dark magic, similar to the Hound of Hecate he defeated before. He speculates that it could be an unregistered summoning magic, which is a tantalizing prospect. A Hellhound's summon would be a massive asset, powerful enough to buy them time to escape even a tough fight. Then Keigo has a stroke of genius. He points a finger in the air, a classic lightbulb moment. What about appraisal? Miyoshi immediately gets it. Appraisal is a staple skill in reincarnation stories, allowing the user to see stats and information numerically. The ability to see concrete numbers would be a game changer. Miyoshi is practically vibrating with excitement, insisting that Keigo absolutely must get one if they find it. But the reality of the 10th floor sets in, and Miyoshi's excitement turns to dread. He remembers the floor is swarming with undead. Keigo explains his strategy. They'll use an assimilation potion to blend in, since the undead are drawn to living humans. This will allow them to pass through the swarms unnoticed. They can hunt Manhwas during the day and Barghests at night, maximizing their efficiency. Keigo is confident his water magic will be enough, as long as his intelligence stat is high enough, and if they run out of magic, they have plenty of iron balls as backup ammunition. Plus, Keigo reveals his item box has an enormous capacity, more than enough to carry all the supplies they'll need. However, they can't leave just yet. They're still waiting for a call from the JDA. Keigo then reveals his grander scheme. He's been inspired by Miss Naruse's shrewd business sense and has decided to clean house. He plans to use the orb to manipulate global politics, forcing a minority party to hold the deciding vote between 2 major powers. Just as he's explaining his plan, Miss Naruse herself arrives at the door. She bursts in bowing deeply, her face a mask of panic and regret. "I'm so sorry." Both Keigo and Miyoshi are stunned. What's going on? Naruse delivers the bombshell. The Japanese government doesn't want to buy the orb. Their reason? They don't have the budget. It's the worst-case scenario. Keigo is baffled by the decision. Naruse explains that the government's response was essentially an appeal to his patriotism, suggesting he should provide the orb for free if he truly cared about his country. Keigo scoffs at the outdated, manipulative logic. The person behind this disastrous decision was none other than Executive Director Mizuho. He made the call during a private meeting with the Ministry of Finance, completely bypassing proper channels. Keigo can't believe the level of incompetence. He thought Mizuho was an idiot, but not this ignorant. Without missing a beat, he shifts to a new plan. "Miyoshi," he says calmly, "put it up on the auction site." Naruse apologizes again, feeling responsible, but Keigo waves it off. He realizes that with global power at stake, their meetings have probably been bugged for a while now. His eyes harden. Once the auction starts, he warns, we'll have to lay low. He anticipates a storm of harassment, and pressure from various countries, the dungeon, he concludes, is now the safest place for them. They'll head there immediately. If they go now, other countries will assume they're on their way to retrieve the orb, and they won't dare interfere until they know where Kigo's party is going. He then turns to a flustered Narusi, making a dramatic gesture that she mistakes for a marriage proposal. After clearing up the misunderstanding, he lays out his plans for a new company, suggesting they'll need reliable staff and that Narusi's older sister, Midori, would be a perfect fit. They set the auction for the 28th, giving them one full day to let the news spread. Miyoshi excitedly asks if he can splurge on preparations, and Keigo gives him the green light. As they discuss their plans, Keigo pinpoints the most dangerous time, the day before and the day of the trade. By hiding in the dungeon, they can avoid the inevitable chaos. He's not scared, he's thrilled. Chases in the city are the best part of action movies, he says with a grin, bumping fists with Miyoshi. Narusi, meanwhile, looks like she's about to have a panic attack. The moment the auction site goes live, the world reacts with shocking speed. Keigo makes one last call to Tanaka at the JDA. The man is in a full-blown meltdown. Keigo calmly informs him that since Japan officially relinquished its claim, the orb is now on the open market. He advises Tanaka to monitor the number of foreigners arriving in the country after the 26th. Then he hangs up. He tosses the burner phone into his dimensional storage and powers off his personal phone. They are officially off the grid. The news ripples across the globe, landing on the desk of Deputy Secretary Curtis Hathaway in Washington, D.C. He is furious. His subordinate, Aaron Ainsworth, confirms the unthinkable. The seller's license is with the JDA, and the auction is legitimate. The terms are insane: a 2-day bidding period, with collection required within 24 hours of winning. A deal that fast is simply not possible under U.S. regulations. Their intelligence report suggests this isn't a simple scam. LT. Simon has confirmed the sellers are the same group that acquired 2 previously unregistered skills. They conclude the Japanese government isn't involved, which makes the situation even more volatile. The orb is absolutely necessary to maintain the global balance of power, with a potential price tag exceeding $10 billion. Hathaway cuts straight to the most ruthless option: kidnapping the people involved. In his mind, when world power is on the line, ethics are a luxury. Of course, he says this with a cynical laugh, claiming that as guardians of democracy, they would never do such a thing. He's informed that LT. Simon has already gone rogue, making contact with the auctioneer and diving into the Yoyogi dungeon on his own initiative. Hathaway sees an opportunity. He decides to sideline Ainsworth and have his own Department of Dungeons handle the bidding directly. He doesn't want to owe anyone any favors. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Prime Minister Ibe is facing a political nightmare. He was blindsided that morning by visits from both the North American and Russian defense bureaus regarding the auction. A critical decision was made in a secret meeting he wasn't even aware of. It turns out, Executive Director Mizuo cited a lack of funds, and another official foolishly suggested the explorer should just donate the multi-billion-dollar artifact out of patriotism. The government is now facing an international crisis born from pure incompetence, with less than 22 hours to somehow scrape together over $10 billion before a G20 summit. In Moscow, the situation is analyzed with cold precision. They deduce that Keigo's group doesn't physically possess the orb yet, making the tight delivery schedule a strategic move. Losing this orb means losing their advantage in dungeon development, something they cannot afford. The order is given: dispatch a team from the FSB's elite Vega group. Their official mission is to watch over Yoyogi. Their real mission is to act as an insurance policy. If Russia doesn't win the bid, they are to ensure the orb never reaches its new owner. The message is chillingly clear. Even in the safest part of Japan, the commander says, accidents happen. A call is placed to the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. The wheels of espionage and sabotage begin to turn. The game is on, and Tokyo is about to become the board. Our hero Keigo is on the move, but he's not alone. He glances back, his expression grim. We're being followed, he states, confirming Miyoshi's fears. It's not just one group, but 4 distinct teams, and he quickly identifies the major players on the world stage: the Americans, the British, the Chinese, and even their own countrymen from Japan. Miyoshi ducks as they hurry through the snowy terrain, the tension palpable. Keigo knows this isn't a random encounter. These teams aren't here to stop them, they're here to track them, to see exactly where they're going. The reason for this international scramble is a single, world-altering item: an orb that grants the user the ability to understand the other world language. After alerting his contact, Tanaka, Keigo and Miyoshi headed straight into the Yoyogi dungeon. Learning from past mistakes, Keigo came prepared this time, wearing a simple cloak to hide his telltale novice gear. But their pursuers are persistent. Miyoshi can't figure out how they're being tracked so easily in the sparse crowd. Do they have some kind of personal radar? She wonders aloud. Keigo suspects as much, theorizing that the military has tech that could fit in a backpack with a kilometer-wide range in open spaces. Their only option is to push deeper and try to outpace them. Meanwhile, At the Japan Dungeon Association headquarters, a high-level briefing is underway. The profits from D-Power's recent deals are staggering, but that's not the main concern. The real issue is the influx of foreign agents. Teams from the UK and China have already arrived, ostensibly to visit Yoyogi. The director immediately cuts to the chase. Why are they ignoring their own dungeons to gather here? The answer is obvious. The auction for the Otherworld language orb, which is scheduled to be delivered to the JDA headquarters, right here in Ichigaya. The list of visitors keeps growing. France, Germany, and even a specialized American team are requesting access. One of the agents notes her concern, mentioning the Simon team is a direct action force under the president's control, a far cry from a simple support unit. The situation is unprecedented. For the first time since the dungeons appeared, the top 20 explorers from around the globe have all gathered in a single location. Yoyogi Dungeon, normally not even fully open to the public, has become the world stage. The director speculates that these teams are entering the dungeon now to try and find the orb themselves before the auction even begins. Back in the dungeon, Keigo analyzes their pursuers. The different nationalities likely have different goals. If there are any Russians in the mix, he grimly concludes, their objective is probably assassination. The Yoyogi dungeon is vast, and finding the orb would be a monumental task. By tracking D-Powers, these teams hope to narrow down the search area significantly. Unbeknownst to him, the JDA has already assigned a security detail to watch over him and Miyoshi, though purely for surveillance. The director smirks, imagining the panic at the Self-Defense Force base as they watch this international incident unfold on their turf. He confirms that his agent has a way to contact Keigo in an emergency. Having shaken their tails for now, Keigo and Miyoshi reach the 8th floor, where a small base camp has been set up. It's a strange sight, an open plaza with low walls and even a food stall. Keigo, baffled by the commerce, learns that plenty of explorers pass through here. The vendor offers them some orc meat skewers, explaining that it's more profitable to cook the low drop rate pork from this floor than to haul it topside. Though expensive, they buy too. Miyoshi complains that it's overcooked, but Keigo finds it surprisingly good. As they turn to leave, the vendor glances down, catching a glimpse of Keigo's novice gear beneath his cloak. "You're not going down in that gear, are you?" he asks casually. The comment hits Keigo like a ton of bricks. He's been spotted. He needs to be more careful. The moment they're out of sight, the friendly vendor is on the radio. He's a scout and he's reporting their position. But his voice is laced with disbelief. His own team is a full floor behind, and yet Keigo and Miyoshi are already heading to the 9th. Who the hell are these guys? He wonders, stunned by their speed. In a quiet bar in Shinjuku, a far more dangerous game is being played. A man named Terazawa confronts Mr. Saiga, the mastermind behind the scenes. Terazawa is furious, demanding to know why Saiga stood by and watched this situation escalate. He accuses Saiga of intentionally creating this mess, of manipulating D-Powers into putting the orb up for auction. Saiga just smirks coolly. He dismisses Terazawa's concerns, stating that this is a matter for nations to fight over, far beyond what a single section chief can handle. Terazawa presses him, but Saiga points out that D-Powers has only announced the auction. The orb hasn't actually been found yet. He admits to leaking information to a JDA executive to create this scenario, creating a global frenzy for an item that might not even exist yet. Saiga lays out his strategy. The auction is tomorrow. This is Japan's last chance to get its priority back. He calls the orb a bargaining chip. He poses a chilling question. If Japan gets the orb, who will they give it to? A JDA staffer? A bureaucrat? A soldier? Whoever uses it, he argues, will never have a normal life again. They'd be a unique asset, viewed with suspicion and paranoia day in and day out. Who would step into such a role? He then questions if it's even in Japan's best interest to acquire it at all. His true plan is far more complex. He envisions a world where one nation holds the key to translation, leading to endless disputes. If Russia contradicts a translation, does Japan have the power to insist they're lying? Saiga argues that Japan's current global standing is based on its post-war economic prosperity, backed by its alliance with the US. Giving them this orb would be a trump card that sows discord. It's a classic case of divide and conquer. The world's most militarized nation, the US, wouldn't feel safe if a small country like Japan had its own independent translator. Saiga's strategy is to let the other countries restrain each other. What the US wants to hide, Russia will reveal, and vice versa. It creates a balance of power. We're at the same table, he tells Terazawa, but the other countries are playing an entirely different game. Final instruction is simple, let the US draw the trump card. Back in the dungeon, Keigo and Miyoshi arrive on the 9th floor. It's a dense climax forest, more like a familiar Japanese woodland than a jungle. Keigo is keeping a mental tally of his kills, needing 33 more to complete some personal goal. He scans the area with Detect Life and picks up a few monsters. For now they decide to head for the 10th floor. The 9th is surprisingly crowded with other explorers, including heavily armed self-defense force squads working in tight formations. Keigo observes their tactics, noting how they use bunker shields and fire rifle volleys, a force to be reckoned with. To avoid being seen, Keigo and Miyoshi slip past them and head for the stairs to the 10th floor, planning to spend the night there as darkness falls. The 10th floor is a nightmare landscape, a sprawling cemetery filled with moaning, shambling zombies. They immediately set up a defensive position on a nearby hilltop, and Keigo unleashes his magic. The ethereal circles of light blast the undead apart, but the zombies are horrifyingly resilient. One lurches forward, dragging its severed lower half, a scene straight out of a horror movie. Together, Keigo and Miyoshi coordinate their attacks, blasting waves of zombies to pieces. They retreat to their secret weapon, a heavily armored camper van, slamming the reinforced door shut just in time. Inside, Keigo catches his breath. He's dropped over 30 of them, but he's still got a ways to go. Miyoshi remarks on the awful stench the zombies leave behind even after they vanish. From the safety of the camper, Keigo uses his Detect Life skill, which surprisingly works on the undead. He can see them on a monitor, swarming outside. The view is clear, almost like it's enhanced with infrared or light amplification. They decide to eat dinner, while the dead mindlessly claw at the titanium shell of their vehicle. Meanwhile, back on the 9th floor, the Chinese team is preparing to descend. Their guide warns that even top-tier teams avoid the 10th floor at night. But their leader, Lao Wang, is determined, pointing out that the British and Americans have gone down. He orders his team to move out. The nearby SDF team watches them go, unable to intervene. Should we help them? One soldier asks. We can't, his superior replies. They're on their own. He knows that these two from D-Powers are Japanese VIPs and should be rescued. But his orders are strictly surveillance. Getting involved now, he muses, could only produce the worst results. His fears are realized moments later. The Chinese team is swarmed, their ammo useless. One of their own, Xiao Wang, is grabbed by a massive zombie. The leader screams for her to stop firing, as the bullets will just ricochet. Realizing they're completely outmatched, he orders a full retreat. Inside the camper, Keigo and Miyoshi hear the distant explosions and screams. They realize another team is being torn apart, but the sounds are already fading, suggesting a retreat. There's nothing they can do. Suddenly, a new threat appears on their monitor. A Barghest, a monstrous hellhound, materializes from the fog. Keigo grabs a helmet with military-grade night vision goggles and peers out from the roof hatch. The view is crystal clear. The fog grows thicker, a dark, unnatural mist clinging to the beast. He spots it, and without a moment's hesitation, unleashes a barrage of magic. The projectiles slam into the hound, but it dodges the final blasts with supernatural speed. Keigo adjusts his aim and fires again, this time blowing the creature to smithereens. From the Barghest's remains, a treasure trove of new skill orbs appears. Keigo passes the list to Miyoshi. They've acquired several powerful new abilities, including darkness magic, status resistance, and disease resistance. The resistance skills are incredibly valuable, offering protection against everything from poison to paralysis. The darkness magic, however, is a high-level orb they decide to shelve until they can get it properly appraised. With the immediate threat gone, Keigo gets back to work, popping out of the roof hatch to farm the still swarming zombies. He uses water lances and his storage skill to effortlessly dispatch them and collect their drops. After a while, he checks his stats and realizes he's burned through about half his mana. Time for a break. Just as he pulls back, an arrow whistles past his head. He ducks instinctively. Peeking out, he sees a skeleton archer, a monster that wasn't listed in the dungeon database. Miyoshi, he yells, don't let your guard down. Miyoshi, already on it, has the new enemy on her monitors. She takes over the assault. From the safety of the camper's console, she unleashes her own magical iron balls, watching the screens and firing as if she's playing a video game. Keigo is amazed. Her ability to project her attacks from a distance is more than just convenient. It's a cheat code for dungeon clearing. They check the loot from his farming session, mostly basic materials like bones and magic crystals. Zombies don't drop much. Miyoshi laughs. If we had a real base here, you could keep doing that forever. Keigo smiles and decides to take a shower while she keeps watch. Back on the 9th floor, the battered remnants of the Chinese team stagger out of the stairwell. The SDF commander immediately orders a rescue party to assist the injured. Their wounds are severe, a grim testament to the horrors that await on the 10th floor at night. Later, back inside the camper, Miyoshi gets Keigo's attention. What is it? he asks, stepping out of the shower room. She points to the monitor, her face a mixture of shock and awe. Outside, where there was once only a graveyard, a massive, Western-style mansion has materialized out of thin air. It just appeared. The rules of the dungeon have changed once again. After a long day of grinding through zombies, Yoshimura and Miyoshi are just about ready to call it quits when the world around them glitches. One moment, they're in a familiar snowy field. The next, a massive, Western-style mansion looms before them, materializing out of thin air. There was no warning, no sound, just a building where there wasn't one before. They immediately start trying to rationalize it. An illusion? Unlikely. Their ultrasonic sensors confirm the topography hasn't changed, meaning this mansion is a new addition. Not a teleportation trick. It has a real, physical presence, casting a long shadow in the dim light. They backtrack, trying to pinpoint the trigger. The last monster they defeated was a standard zombie, nothing special. So what caused this? Ever the analyst has a hunch. He asks Yoshimura about his total kill count for the day. The number is 373. For most people, that's just a number. But for Miyoshi it's a clue. 373, he explains, is a palindromic prime number. It reads the same forwards and backwards. Not just any one, either. It's the 13th one. This isn't random. It implies the dungeon is operating on a level of logic tied to Earth's culture and mathematics, which is a terrifying thought. The rabbit hole gets deeper when Yoshimura connects the number to Golgotha, the Aramaic word for skull, fitting for a day spent fighting skeletons. This mansion isn't a random event. It's a hidden stage, a reward, or a trap, unlocked by a very specific condition. They've come this far, and curiosity outweighs caution. After stashing their base dolly nearby, they gear up and decide to head in. The mansion's gate is a work of ornate, menacing ironwork. As they get closer, they see it's covered in inscriptions. It's a bizarre mix of what looks like cuneiform and hieroglyphics, ancient, alien text. But at the very bottom, clear as day, is a string of Arabic numerals. And the number is just insane. It's a 1, followed by 13 zeros, then the number 666, 13 more zeros, and a final 1. Miyoshi recognizes it instantly. It's the Belphegor Prime, a famous number in certain circles, named after one of the 7 princes of hell, Belphegor, the demon of invention and discovery, who tempts people with new things. The whole theme is starting to click into place. Prime numbers, demonology, and a mysterious mansion. It's a carefully crafted puzzle box of death. Yoshimura pulls out his phone to record everything, just in case they don't make it out. With a deep breath, he pushes the gate. It swings open with a heavy, groaning screech. Standing before the mansion, the atmosphere is thick with dread. Miyoshi feels it instantly. "Senpai," he whispers, "this place is a bad guy." Yoshimura knows. But something is compelling him forward, an invisible force pulling him towards the entrance. As if on cue, the mansion's defenses begin to stir. A raven lands on the roof, its eyes glowing with malice. Stone gargoyles, perched like silent sentinels, suddenly turn their heads to stare directly at them. The raven takes flight, circling above the clock tower, a clear omen. But the worst is yet to come. Looking up, Miyoshi points to the eaves of the roof. It's not wood or stone, it's a writhing, pulsating mass of countless eyeballs, all staring down at them. The sight is so grotesque it makes their skin crawl. A colony of mono eyes, just waiting. They're trapped. Run back through the gates and the gargoyles will surely give chase. Enter the mansion, and who knows, horrors await. It's a classic pincer move, with no good options. They're frozen in indecision, caught between a rock and a hard place full of eyeballs. Miyoshi tries to strategize an escape, but even he sounds unsure. They stand before the heavy oak doors, the gargoyle and the mass of eyes staring them down, daring them to make a move. Then, with an unnatural smoothness, the doors begin to open on their own, completely silent. It's not magic. It's advanced engineering, something that shouldn't exist in a place like this. Yoshimura's survival instinct screams at him to turn back, but it's too late. The raven lands on the gatepost behind them and lets out a croak that sounds chillingly like nevermore. They're cornered. If they try to leave now, they'll be attacked from all sides. Yoshimura forces a smile, trying to break the tension with a bit of humor. "Well, can't stand around here forever," he says, and with a shared look of resignation they step into the darkness. They enter a vast, cathedral-like library, with bookshelves stretching from floor to ceiling. The layout is strange. Instead of a grand staircase, the room is dominated by 2 grotesque gargoyle statues facing the center. Miyoshi immediately switches into gamer mode. If this were a game, he muses, they'd come alive as we approach. Yoshimura decides there's only one way to find out. He winds up and hurls an iron ball straight at one of the statues. It connects with a massive boom, shattering the stone gargoyle into 1,000 pieces. For a second, there's only relief. Maybe they were just statues after all. But then, the heavy doors slam shut behind them with a deafening clang. They definitely offended someone. 3 glowing magic circles blazed to life on the floor, and from them emerge 3 towering skeletal executioners, their bones rattling as they rise. These are a far cry from the fodder they fought outside. They're huge, wielding massive swords, and they move with a terrifying purpose. Yoshimura makes the first move, launching an iron ball. But to his shock, it bounces off the skeleton's skull with a loud clang, barely phasing it. The creature staggers but doesn't fall. Miyoshi sees it instantly. It has some kind of damage resistance. It can endure those, he shouts, but Yoshimura is already winding up for another shot. He throws again, and this time, the skull explodes in a shower of bone fragments. Miyoshi figures it out. A single attack is resisted, but attacking the same spot repeatedly overwhelms it. With one down, they turn to the other 2. This is going to be a tough fight, and they can't afford to waste their limited supply of iron balls on these mini-bosses. Suddenly, one of the skeletons begins to spin, its massive sword becoming a whirlwind of death. It's a classic area of effect attack. Yoshimura yells for Miyoshi to get to a corner. The square room should keep them safe from the spinning blade. The plan works. The attack stops, and the bookcase and walls hold firm. Seizing the moment of vulnerability, they coordinate their attacks, and with a final, crushing blow, the last skeleton crumbles to dust. The monsters dissolve, leaving behind a shower of loot. They've scored some healing potions, a few magic crystals, and a unique weapon, the Scimitar of Deserts. Miyoshi, a huge Lord of the Rings fan, immediately geeks out, comparing the skeletons to Barrow White's and the new sword to Frodo's blade Sting. This isn't just a simple drop, it's a named weapon, something not even listed in the Explorer's Guide. But the name, Scimitar of Deserts, feels out of place in a Gothic mansion. Just as they're pondering this, a new magic circle glows in the center of the room, and a stone pedestal rises from the floor. On top of it rests an inscription, another mystery for them to solve. It's written in the same bizarre script from the gate, and of course, they can't read a single word of it. As Miyoshi tries to get a picture, Yoshimura warns him to be careful of traps. He's right to be cautious. The bookshelf right behind him begins to ripple and warp, its wood and paper twisting into a monstrous form. Miyoshi, we've got to go, he screams. They bolt for a side door, yanking it open just as the library itself comes alive to swallow them whole. They burst out onto a balcony, but they've jumped from the frying pan into the fire. The raven and the remaining gargoyles are waiting for them. The beasts charge, and the fight is on. Miyoshi throws a magic orb, blasting the raven out of the sky, while Yoshimura activates his defensive shields. His iron balls slam into the gargoyles, blowing off their wings and limbs, but the creatures are relentless, crawling forward even after being dismembered. He has no choice but to go for total annihilation, shattering their bodies with brute force. He ducks and weaves, his shield taking heavy blows as he systematically destroys the last of them, finally clearing the balcony. But it's not over. The entire mansion begins to melt like wax, the architecture dripping and distorting into a nightmarish landscape. The ceiling gives way, and the horrific colony of eyeballs plummets down, their optic nerves slithering like tentacles. They hit the ground with wet, plopping sounds and immediately begin to swarm towards them. Miyoshi is grabbed by the ankle, and Yoshimura has to yank him free. The eyeballs surge forward, like a tidal wave of flesh. In the middle of this chaos, a loot screen for defeating the gargoyles pops up. Bad timing, Yoshimura yells, ignoring it completely. Get to the gate. He can't even look at the disgusting wave of eyes pursuing them, terrified of being buried alive under them. The ground itself is melting away, turning into a sticky, squelching mire. They can see the gate, but behind them, the bell in the clock tower begins to toll, a deep, resonant bong signaling their time is up. They sprint, their boots crunching on the dissolving ground. As they pass through the gates, a blinding flash of light erupts behind them. When they turn back, the mansion, the eyes, everything, is gone. All that's left are a few dropped items shimmering on the snow. They collapse, utterly spent, the adrenaline leaving them shaky and weak. What was that? Miyoshi gasps. Yoshimura has no answer. Later, safely back in their armored RV, they finally get a look at their reward from that hellscape. The special loot screen offered a choice of incredibly rare skills: fear monitoring or appraisal. The cost was astronomical, but the potential was undeniable. They're exhausted, still processing the fact that they almost died, but they managed to snag the appraisal skill. They pieced together what happened. The mansion was a timed event, triggered by a specific kill count, and disappearing at the stroke of midnight. It seems the dungeon operates on local time, a bizarre but useful piece of information. After a brush with death like that, they decide a little indulgence is in order. They crack open some beers, a small celebration for surviving. Yoshimura hands the appraisal skill orb to Miyoshi. With a flair for the dramatic, Miyoshi declares, "I'm going to stop being human," and absorbs the orb, immediately spitting out his beer in the process. Next up is the darkness magic orb he also acquired. Now for the real test. How does appraisal actually work? Yoshimura dumps all the loot on the table for Miyoshi to practice on. The haul is impressive: potions, gargoyle crystals, obsidian, and even one of the eyeballs. Miyoshi focuses on the scimitar of deserts. He just looks at it and thinks about it, and suddenly, the information flows into his mind. The weapon's name is plural: deserts, a sword of retribution. A detailed status screen appears in his mind, showing its stats: a significant attack boost, a chance to reflect damage, and a chilling flavor text: those who bring calamity shall perish by calamity. Retribution will fall on those who do harm. Now for the real test. Appraising a person. Miyoshi looks at Yoshimura, and the results are a list of seemingly random numbers. Confused, Miyoshi tries it on himself and sees nothing but zeros. This doesn't make any sense. Yoshimura has an idea. He manually lowers his own stats in the system menu, which are normally set high for dungeon diving. Miyoshi appraises him again, and the numbers are different, but still nonsensical. After a bit of brainstorming and a meal break, they finally crack the code. The appraisal skill isn't showing raw stats. It's performing long division. It takes the target stat, divides it by the user's corresponding stat, and displays the remainder. That's why Miyoshi saw zeros for himself. Any number divided by itself has a remainder of 0. It's a system designed to prevent low-level users from accurately gauging high-level opponents. With this new understanding, Miyoshi is able to reverse engineer Yoshimura's current stats, which are still impressively high. The average for an adult is around 10. Yoshimura's are pathetic by his standards, but godlike for anyone else. Finally, they appraise the darkness magic orb. The skill is summon hellhounds, with the number of summons tied to the user's intelligence stat. Another cryptic flavor text mentions the gates of hell opening. With his current stats, Miyoshi can summon 4 of them. He decides he wants to try it right now, right here in the RV, to get a guard dog for their office. He names his future companion Cavall, after King Arthur's dog, and begins the summoning. A brilliant magic circle illuminates the cramped space. A moment later, a massive, shaggy, and incredibly intimidating hellhound materializes before them, its eyes glowing with otherworldly power. It actually worked. Wafer. With the summoning circle glowing, Miyoshi's face lights up pure, unadulterated joy. It worked, he cheers, the magic coalescing before him, and in an instant, a creature of shadow and fur appears. Miyoshi immediately throws his arms around it, completely captivated. So fluffy. Iida, on the other hand, is frozen in place, his mind struggling to process what he's seeing. Whoa, he mutters, isn't it? Kind of big, and he's not wrong. This isn't just a hellhound. It's a monster. Miyoshi, still hugging the beast, points out its mouth is level with Iida's head. It's easily over 3 meters long, closer in size to a Bengal tiger than any dog. The creature's fur is a deep, matte black that seems to drink the light, and its eyes. They aren't the typical crimson of a hellhound. They're a piercing, almost golden color. Miyoshi has already decided on a name. I'll call him Cavall, he says proudly, explaining it's the name of King Arthur's dog. He's even got names picked out for the other 3 he can summon. Iida is less concerned with names and more with logistics. He's amazing, but how are you supposed to walk around with a creature that size? Miyoshi just smiles. Don't worry, he's a fantasy creature, I'm sure he can shrink down. With a hopeful look, Miyoshi turns to his new companion. You can do it, Cavall. The massive beast looks back, lets out a small whimper, and curls into a ball on the floor. It's a cute gesture, but it's still the size of a small car. Miyoshi is absolutely beaming, completely won over by the display. Cavall! You're so cute, he exclaims, diving in for another hug. Snapping back to reality, Iida tries to figure out how to dismiss the summon. So, can we undo this? He asks, gesturing at the giant wolf thing taking up their entire living space. Miyoshi tries a command, but Cavall just sits there in silence. I don't think he's going back, he says, a little sheepishly. Iida pieces it together. The flavor text mentioned the gates of hell becoming a paradise for darkness, which means the summoning is permanent. As Miyoshi starts to panic, Iida's analytical mind kicks in. Wait, can't a hellhound use dark magic? He turns to Cavall. You can use magic, right? Can't you just hide in shadows? The beast seems to understand. It stares at its own shadow, and a moment later a black, viscous puddle forms on the floor. Cavall steps into it, melting in the darkness as if it were water. A second later, its head pops back out, peeking around curiously. Miyoshi is stunned silent for a moment before bursting with excitement. That's awesome, Cavall! He cheers, rewarding the hellhound with a ham sandwich, which it happily devours. Iida, ever practical, gives the new ability a simple name. Hide in shadow. It's exactly what it is. After asking Cavall to hide until they call for it again, Iida gives Miyoshi a serious warning. If you behave the same way with normal hellhounds, you'll get eaten. This creature is clearly special. Miyoshi understands. The ability to ambush from the shadows makes Caval incredibly dangerous. He agrees not to summon the other three inside their cramped camper, realizing it would be a disaster. With the immediate crisis averted, they turn their attention to the mysterious page they picked up earlier. The document is a fragment from something called the Book of Wanderers. It speaks of a wandering mansion that appears only once, and warns that those who come in contact with its wisdom will be ruled by madness. Ida connects the dots. The mansion was a rare, one-time spawn, likely triggered by defeating a huge number of specific monsters in a short time, a feat impossible for most explorers. The fact that there's only one original book means the mansion probably won't appear in that room ever again. They debate reporting their findings, but they have no proof. The letters on the pedestal were in a language neither of them could decipher. It's a dead end for now. Exhausted, Ida decides they should rest and keep hunting for a few more days before heading back. He figures the scouts that were tailing them are probably fine, having likely escaped when the coast was clear. Miyoshi jokes that they should tell everyone to hunt colonial worms to get the mansion to spawn, an idea Ida immediately shoots down as horrible. They decide to go on a potion gathering spree the next day and call it a night. The next morning, the hunt begins. Miyoshi has summoned the other three hellhounds, and together, the pack is a whirlwind of destruction, tearing through the undead skeletons and zombies with terrifying efficiency. The four beasts move as one, a perfectly coordinated hunting party. After breakfast, they stand ready outside the camper, a formidable team of bodyguards for Miyoshi. Ida, ever the pragmatist, tries to get a feel for Caval's intelligence, who just gives a gruff bark in response. Miyoshi, meanwhile, is just happy to have his new companions. Ida mentions his own summoning skill is practically useless, as he has no interest in taking care of living things. This brings up a crucial question. What do these hellhounds even eat? Caval, overhearing the conversation, shakes its head vigorously, clearly remembering the delicious sandwich from yesterday. Ida presses the issue, trying to understand if human food is a necessity or just a treat for the creature. He gets the distinct impression that it's more of a luxury. Miyoshi steps in, defending his pet's right to have something tasty once in a while. Ida sighs, relenting. But you guys need to work hard as Miyoshi's guards. Caval lets out a happy bark, its mouth wide in what looks suspiciously like a grin. As the hellhounds go back to clearing out skeletons, Ida's mind is already running through a dozen new problems. Do summoned monsters need licenses? Vaccinations? He wonders if they respawn if they die, a morbid thought he'd rather not test. He makes a mental note to bombard Miss Narus with questions when they get back. Suddenly, his life detection skill pings. Senpai. Miyoshi says, "We have company." They have no idea how they were found, but Ida presumes it's some form of surveillance. They need to move. "We'll go behind the hill and head for the graves," he commands, and they quickly retreat out of sight. Ida keeps a close watch on their pursuers. They're moving slowly, being cautious. To throw them off, he and Miyoshi move twice as fast, using the terrain to quickly leave their trackers far behind. Meanwhile, in a well-appointed office in France, a different kind of hunt is being discussed. A man reports to his superior about Ahmed, a wealthy Indian man whose daughter was supposedly bewitched. The superior dismisses the idea of a cult, suspecting it was a cover for a skill deal. The skill in question? Super recovery, something that was recently sold at a Japanese auction. He'd initially thought it was a scam. The price was far too low for its described effects. But the seller and the monster that dropped it were both unknown. And now, Ahmed's daughter is healed. He realizes a true miracle has occurred, and it must be the work of a shadowy organization. Artem Foraminis. Back on the 10th floor, Ida and Miyoshi are methodically clearing the area. The drop rates for potions from skeletons are abysmal, but they press on. They stick to the road, with Ida taking point on the newly spawned zombies, while Miyoshi directs the hounds. Miyoshi has given his pack Arthurian names, which Ida finds utterly confusing, but he can't deny their effectiveness. The hellhounds are a force of nature, tearing through the undead with ease. Nearby, a squad of JDA soldiers are on patrol. One of them notes the carnage, calling the person responsible crazy. Their sensor specialist, Noro, reports he can't detect any human life signs besides their own squad and the group far behind them. His life detector is a focused, long-range type, unlike Ida's omnidirectional one, meaning our duo has slipped through his perception net. The soldiers find shell casings left by the Chinese team and decide to use the remainder of their combat drugs duration to investigate the 10th floor. Just as they're getting into a rhythm, Ida gets a lucky drop, a complete skeleton orb. The orb's skills are incredible life detection, law resistance, and immortality. But there's a catch. The immortality it grants is the undeath of a skeleton. It's a twisted, literal interpretation of the word. They immediately agree this is one for the vaults. A cautionary tale in item form. Their goal of killing 373 skeletons for the mansion to appear seems daunting, but Miyoshi reveals his 10-ball storage skill, which makes him far more efficient at ranged attacks than Ida. The problem isn't magic, it's money. The iron balls he uses for ammo are expensive, much to Ida's surprise. Miyoshi shows him some cheaper, smaller pellets he's been trying. Ida tries flicking one, launching it like a bullet. He manages to hit a zombie, but realizes that accuracy is going to be a major issue. As Miyoshi prepares to open another orb, an arrow whistles past Ida's head, slamming into a skeleton just behind him. "What was that?" he yells, completely caught off guard. They spot the culprit, a skeleton archer, a new monster type. Before they can even react, the hellhounds are on it, tearing the creature to pieces. Ida gives them a grateful look, impressed by their speed. "Thank you," he says, patting one on the head. The close call gets him thinking. What was it you said earlier? The next orb. Miyoshi confirms it's recovery magic, though he can't imagine what kind of monster would drop it. This sparks a memory for Ida. "Do you know what a saint is?" he asks. "It's not a registered class, just a rumor." He explains that saints are said to possess incredible restorative magic, akin to Jan of the Ark. He's seen posts on social media about them healing grievous injuries for a massive fee, but always assumed it was a scam. Ida figures any real evidence would be scrubbed from the net. But Miyoshi corrects him. Someone he knows looked into it, and the organization is a newly formed religious corporation based in France. He confirms the healing is real, but it feels different from typical miracles. The organization's name translates to something strange, Althum Folaminis Sacriesi. In Japanese, Miyoshi says, it's like a deep hole cult, not a cult of haze or Tartarus, but literally, a hole. The bizarre name sends a shiver down Ida's spine. The true identity of this cult, it seems, is a mystery far deeper than any dungeon. We start with a dive into the shadowy world of dungeon-related cults, specifically one known as the Altum Foraminis Sacriesi. This group operates on the fringes, but it stands apart from all the others for one critical reason. Its figurehead, a saintess named Marie-Anne-Thérèse Martin, was genuine. Her powers were real. The story of her rise is told through the eyes of a former fraud, David Garcia. 2 years ago, he stumbled upon a strange scene in a small town. A young woman sat on a park bench, surrounded by kneeling elders who treated her like a deity. His curiosity piqued. He watched from a distance as a man brought his wife forward, her body covered in what looked like horrific, life-threatening burns. David was disgusted, thinking they should be rushing her to an emergency room, not to some performer. He felt her life was being thrown away on baseless faith. But then, the impossible happened. The woman on the bench reached out, and a blindingly pure light enveloped the injured woman. The couple's shock was mirrored on David's own face as he watched the miracle unfold from afar. In that one moment, witnessing the husband fall to his knees in pure, unadulterated gratitude, David's entire worldview shattered. This wasn't a trick. This was a revelation. His cynical mind immediately tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was some advanced potion. But she was doing it for free. That's when he saw her father, a man who radiated the energy of a classic swindler. Seeing an opportunity, David approached him with a business proposition. They built a legend around her, a carefully constructed narrative tying her to the patron saints of France, painting her as a symbol of hope for the sick and vulnerable. The story was so compelling, so perfectly crafted, that it began to draw in the powerful politicians and the global elite, all mesmerized by the girl who performed small, undeniable miracles. Her ethereal beauty certainly didn't hurt either. Meanwhile, deep inside the Yoyogi dungeon, Senpai and Miyoshi are discussing this very cult. Miyoshi finds it odd that a group with real dungeon-derived powers isn't more famous. Senpai, ever the analyst, figures it's a calculated move. They're using a religious group as a cover, he explains, keeping a low profile while getting protection from the influential people they've healed. It's a brilliant, self-sustaining system, and thanks to tax laws in France, donations are a win-win, offering tax savings for the wealthy in exchange for miraculous healing. The thought makes Senpai feel a bit self-conscious, seeing a parallel in how Miyoshi protects him. The core question remains. Did the saintess actually get her healing magic from a dungeon in France? Senpai pulls up the skill database, but finds nothing. It's not registered, he mutters, speculating that it must be a unique, undiscovered method of acquisition. They brainstorm possibilities, moving from ancient shamanistic rituals to the formal structures of clerics and priests. Miyoshi lands on an interesting theory. What about sacred monsters? Like a unicorn. Their conversation is cut short. Senpai's senses flare up. Something is approaching and it's taking a direct, off-path route straight to them. He detects two individuals, their stats are high, though not quite on the level of the monsters they've faced before. Deciding to press on, they descend to the 11th floor, a barren wasteland of rock and ash, to hunt lesser salamanders. Senpai can't help but tease Miyoshi about his constant use of water magic, calling it suspicious. In that exact moment, a fireball screams out of the sky towards them. "Run!" Senpai yells. Miyoshi reacts instantly, throwing up a shimmering magic shield that deflects the blast with a concussive boom. The culprit is revealed to be Olwen, one of their hellhounds, looking quite pleased with himself. It was friendly fire. The fireball strikes its intended target, a creature that had been perfectly camouflaged as a rock, a lesser salamander. It was using mimicry, Senpai realizes. As the creature thrashes, its tail breaks off. "Senpai, the tail!" Miyoshi shouts. "It's a rare drop, it'll disappear if we don't finish the main body now." Before they can even move, Owen lunges and tears the salamander apart. Miyoshi showers the hellhound with praise while Senpai stands there, slightly dumbfounded that their objective was completed by their own pet. He has to admit, the hellhound's senses are far superior to his own detection abilities. A skill orb drops from the defeated monster. Senpai checks the contents and his eyes widen. It contains a list of powerful skills: fire magic, self-amputation, self-regeneration, and one more, a single-use magic with an astronomical value next to it. Miyoshi jokes that the regeneration skills would be perfect for a lizard, but Senpai is focused on that final skill. He holds the orb, its power humming in his hand. "You want to use it?" he asks Miyoshi almost rhetorically. With a grim resolve, Senpai declares, "I guess I'll just stop being human," and begins to absorb its power. Miyoshi panics. "Wait, Senpai. The name is Inferno Magic. That sounds incredibly dangerous, and we don't know its power." But Senpai is already lost in thought. Inferno, that name. It's a skill that shouldn't exist in this world. As Miyoshi devolves into a panicked, nerdy rant, Senpai raises a hand to silence him. This is serious. The aftermath is staggering. Senpai is completely drained, having expended a colossal amount of his energy. Before them lies a scene of absolute annihilation. A massive, perfectly smooth, black crater has been carved into the dungeon floor. Everything inside it, rocks, monsters, potential drops, has been utterly vaporized. Miyoshi checks the numbers and is horrified by the sheer MP cost of the spell. Suddenly, Senpai's head whips around. "What's wrong?" Miyoshi asks. "Those people," before they can be seen, Miyoshi grabs him and they run. A short distance away, a military squad watches as two blips on their radar appear, and then vanish in an instant. They're confused and running low on gear. When they finally arrive at the location, they stop dead in their tracks. The ground has been vitrified, turned to glass. The heat required to do this is unthinkable, something you'd only see from a tactical nuke. Could a dragon have appeared? One soldier whispers, immediately dismissing the idea. They realize their targets must have been caught in this blast and simply ceased to exist. Faced with a power that defies all comprehension, their commander makes the only logical choice: withdraw. Now, the timeline shifts. It's November 30th, 2018, the final day of the auction for the language comprehension orb. In the highest offices of the Japanese government, a geopolitical chess game is being played. The consensus is clear. No matter who wins the auction, international friction is unavoidable. So, they've devised a plan. Let the US win. In exchange for their financial support and information sharing, Japan's global influence will be significantly enhanced, while online forums are exploding over the bidding war, which has reached an unbelievable 60 billion yen. The true battle is being fought behind closed doors. Back on the surface, Miyoshi and Senpai finally emerge from the dungeon, just as the auction concludes. Senpai checks the final price, and his jaw hits the floor. Miyoshi puts it into perspective. That's more than the annual budget of some entire prefectures. The winner, it seems, was the US, but not without some internal competition and shrewd backroom negotiations with their NATO allies. But Miyoshi drops a bombshell. Japan's government didn't place a single bid. For the auction of the century, that level of inaction is beyond suspicious. The reality of their situation begins to sink in. With this kind of money on the line, Miyoshi is now a massive target. As they discuss what to do with their eventual 10% cut, a call comes in from Naruse. Miyoshi's paranoia kicks in, suggesting they need JDA protection for the handover. But Senpai isn't worried. Their office is already a fortress. He's not exaggerating. The Hellhounds have been trained by Miyoshi into an elite security force, complete with shadow-based magic for trapping intruders. They've even developed a taste for magic crystals, which Miyoshi is happily providing. Senpai just hopes it remains a treat. But they are not as safe as they think. Across the street, a foreign intelligence team is setting up a surveillance post. Their objective is clear: gather intel on Senpai's group and their acquisition of the language comprehension skill. The apartment building they're using is the only viable spot, but it's strangely filling up with new tenants, likely other agencies. Their target's house is a technological fortress. Laser mics and other remote surveillance tools are completely useless. It's a tricky situation. They're left with only one high-risk option: direct infiltration. As night falls, team leader gives the order, "Let's go." The hunt has begun. Under the quiet cover of darkness, a meticulously planned operation is underway. On a rooftop overlooking their target, two figures in tactical gear confirm their status. One of them, designated Alpha, has already neutralized a guard on the premises, putting him to sleep. His commander, Base, gives him the clear. The mission, codenamed Picnic, is a go. They're not here for a wetwork job. Killing in Japan would cause too many diplomatic headaches. This is a clean, quiet infiltration. With the green light, Alpha begins the operation. He moves with a fluid, practiced grace, vaulting over a high fence as if it were a mere puddle. This is clearly not his first rodeo. Their objective is simple: target a ventilation unit on the side of the house. He and his partner slip through the shadows, their night vision goggles cutting through the gloom. The plan is straightforward. Approach the house, plant a microphone quickly and quietly, and then simply melt away and wait for the perfect opportunity to listen in. A simple surveillance mission. Meanwhile, inside the very house being targeted, the mood is far more relaxed. Yoshimura and Miyoshi are waiting for an associate, Naru-san. Miyoshi remarks that she's a diligent worker, though Yoshimura suspects she's just worried about them. It seems their recent activities haven't gone unnoticed, even by their friends. They need her help deciphering the strange characters they've found. Soon after, Naru's arrives, and she is every bit the expert they hoped for. She immediately dives into the data, identifying the script as a complex mix of ancient languages, Classical Hebrew and Aramaic. The texts are so similar, stemming from the same Phoenician script, that they can be blended together. The problem is the vocabulary is incredibly limited, making a direct translation a nightmare. Miyoshi, wide-eyed, breathes out the only thing that comes to mind: God's language. Yoshimura chuckles, dismissing it as something out of a fantasy novel, but Narus is serious. She explains that the way the languages are fused is fascinating. It's as if an AI, not knowing the subtle distinctions, learned them both as a single language. But Yoshimura cuts to the chase. So, what does it mean? The translation is cryptic and grand. The gatapost they found is called The Wandering Mansion, and the text is an invitation. O wanderer, reach out to the wisdom of the true grimoire. A grimoire of wanderers. Wisdom. It's all starting to click into place. They realize the mansion isn't a static location on that dungeon floor. It's a conditional spawn, a place that only appears when specific requirements are met, remaining hidden until the end of time otherwise. To prove it's not just a theory, Yoshimura decides to show them. He pulls out a memory card, slots it into the TV, and an image of the imposing mansion flashes onto the screen. "This is footage from an action camera I had on my helmet," he explains. Just as he does this, the blinds are drawn. Outside, Alpha sees his opening. His partner gives him the signal, a silent countdown down with his fingers. 3, 1, do. Alpha sprints towards the house, but then in the blink of an eye he's gone. The other operative stares, his eyes wide with disbelief. Alpha didn't get shot, he didn't stumble, he just vanished into thin air. What? Panic erupts over the comms. Base is desperately trying to reach Alpha, but there's no response, only static. The professional calm has been shattered. At the US team's command station in Japan, the analysts are watching the feed in horror. They saw his swift movement, and then, nothing. The operative just disappeared from the screen. The second man vanishes moments later. They frantically scrub the footage, but it's useless. Is it possible that complete optical camouflage actually exists? One of them asks, grasping at straws. They check frame by frame. One moment he's there, the next he's not. It's not a glitch. It's an impossibility. Their multi-million-dollar surveillance equipment is useless. The team leader, realizing they've stumbled into something far beyond their understanding, crumples up the initial report in frustration. Unaware of the chaos unfolding right outside their window, the trio is casually reviewing the mansion footage. Yoshimura explains that the shadow pits in the dungeon are basically roach traps for the unwary. Naruse, however, looks deeply disturbed by what she's seeing. She seems to grasp the gravity of this discovery far more than the others. When Yoshimura jokes about the gruesome things on screen, she cuts right through it. "How far are you planning to report this?" she asks, her voice heavy with concern. Yoshimura's cheerful reply, "Of course, can report everything about this matter to the higher-ups," only seems to deepen her anxiety. He then tells her his supervisor duties are done, and pivots the conversation. He brings out a small, ornate chest. "Would you like to try using this?" he asks with a knowing smile. Her eyes widen. She knows exactly what this is. It's a skill orb case. With trembling hands, she opens it. Inside, a glowing orb pulses, and a holographic inscription appears above it. Interdimensional language comprehension. It's the perfect, almost impossibly convenient solution to their problem. She gasps and Miyoshi quickly shushes her. Yoshimura encourages her to use it. Why choose me? She protests. Yoshimura's expression turns serious. He explains his logic. She holds an important position within the JDA. She has access to information they don't. If this power fell into the wrong hands or was monopolized by a single government, the information from the dungeons could be twisted or hidden. They need an independent translator. He then lays out his audacious plan, Project Heaven Leaks, an anonymous website dedicated to translating and publishing every dungeon inscription they find. It would act as a global watchdog. With only a couple of countries currently possessing this skill, the world is at their mercy. This site would be the only way to publicly verify their claims and prevent them from hiding the truth for their own gain. He's not just exploring a dungeon. He's trying to balance global superpowers. Please accept it, he says. Naruse takes a deep breath, her decision made. She places her hand on the orb. A brilliant light envelops her, and in that moment, the world's second otherworldly translator is born. The next morning, the atmosphere is lighter. Naruse ended up staying the night, and now they're a proper team. But the world outside isn't standing still. The demand for D-powers is creating a new class of desperate orb hunters, and without official regulation, things are getting dangerous. Their home is now a known location, and while they have security courtesy of Archelaus and his pack, they're living under a microscope. Yoshimura hands her the real prize. A fragment of a grimoire he recovered from the Wandering Mansion, a key document that could change everything. Just then, they're interrupted by visitors. It's Tanaka, the mysterious government man, and surprisingly Simon Gershwin, one of the world's top explorers. Simon is here on business for his boss, who apparently won a bid related to the property. Tanaka, as usual, is vague and imposing. Simon confides in Yoshimura that Tanaka is a government official assigned to watch them, but he can't shake an ominous feeling about the man. He jokingly offers to be a bodyguard, grabbing Yoshimura to remind him of the immense power gap between them. After Simon leaves, Tanaka appears silently behind Yoshimura, making him jump. He cuts straight to the point. So, about the captive, how did you manage to capture them? He knows about the operative. Yoshimura plays dumb, chalking it up to the unpredictable nature of being an explorer. Tanaka seems skeptical but leaves it at that, for now. As he and Naruse depart, Yoshimura and Miyoshi are left with a chilling realization. They are completely surrounded by intelligence agents. The stakes are higher than ever. They discuss the terrifying power of the magic crystals they possess, which the world misunderstands as a new form of plutonium. A miscalculation could lead to a catastrophic explosion, and no one even suspects this world-altering energy source is just a reward for feeding their pets. As the day of the orb auction arrives, the city buzzes, unaware of the clandestine wars being fought in the shadows. We open not in the familiar dungeons of Japan, but far away in Russia, at Domodedovo Airport. A stern-looking man, clearly military, is meeting a contact. Arrangements have been made at the embassy. He's part of Vimpel, Russia's elite special forces, and it looks like they're gearing up for a serious operation. Meanwhile, back in the Yoyogi dungeon, our hero and Miyoshi are descending to the 9th layer. He explains their mission for the day. They're not just grinding. They have a very specific target. He wants Miyoshi to experience the colonial worms, a unique monster on this floor. Miyoshi, ever perceptive, calls him out. This isn't just about the experience, it's a little bit revenge, isn't it? A payback for the constant surveillance they've been under. He smirks, admitting that if they can hunt these worms monsters nobody else bothers with, they might just get a very rare item drop. Miyoshi playfully points out that his smirk makes her an accomplice to his cruel plan. He gets serious, analyzing their pursuers. He's sure they're military elite, not some random exploration team that would get wiped out on this floor. He's noticed an increase in personnel disguised as civilian explorers, but he quickly deduces it's not a foreign military unit. It's some other, more covert organization that can quickly deploy agents. With a plan in mind, they move forward, descending past the 8th layer at a surprisingly fast pace. Their pursuers, a squad of heavily armed soldiers, decide it's time to make their move. They're on the 8th layer, a zone notorious for its high density of blood bears and hellhounds. It's the first real test for any serious explorer. They deploy, moving with tactical precision. Our hero's senses immediately pick them up. 6 hostiles closing in fast. It looks like one of the groups following them has finally lost its patience. Miyoshi looks to him for a plan, but before he can even answer, a new threat emerges. A pack of hellhounds, drawn by the commotion, charges in from the opposite direction. A moment later, the problem solves itself. The entire of soldiers is laid out on the forest floor, completely unconscious. He recognizes them instantly. It's the same group that's been tailing them. They're still alive, just knocked out for the foreseeable future. He turns to his own hellhound Ars, who's been observing the whole thing. Ars communicates that the soldiers' gear is too heavy to move. So, a negotiation begins. He offers 6 magic crystals to store the men and their belongings in the vault. A simple, 1 crystal per person deal. Ars barks back, clearly insulted by the lowball offer. Miyoshi is stunned as the hellhound seems to be haggling. The price gets bumped up to 2 crystals per head. Defeated by a dog's business acumen, our hero reluctantly agrees. With the cleanup handled, they can finally get back to the real mission. They descend to the 9th layer, where the grotesque colonial worms await. He muses that the defeated squad will probably suffer some serious mental trauma when they wake up in that writhing nest of monsters. It's a fitting punishment. The fallout from the failed operation is immediate. In a Shinjuku hotel, the Russian Vimpel unit gets the bad news. Their dungeon squad has been annihilated. They realize their target has a massive home field advantage in the dungeon. The responsibility for the mission now falls squarely on them. This is the Bulwark, an illegal intelligence unit secretly dispatched by the SVR, and they're not about to fail twice. Their leader begins planning the assault with cold precision, mapping out the target's likely route to Ichigaya. An attack on a train is risky. Police would swarm an accident scene, and Tokyo's transit system is a labyrinth of overlapping lines, making a clean getaway nearly impossible. Direct attacks are out, but a staged accident could work. The subway is too enclosed, but the above-ground lines are a different story. He points to a spot on the map, Sotobori Park. It's an execution point, with blind spots perfect for an ambush. The equipment is handed out. Modern SIG P320 handguns with suppressors and subsonic rounds. The primary objective is to retrieve the orb, but eliminating the target is fully authorized. The leader smiles grimly. He knows that no plan survives contact with the enemy. The next day, our hero and Miyoshi are at the station, putting their own plan into motion. He explains his strategy for using a coin locker as a decoy, creating the illusion of a handover to draw their enemies out. They board the train, and he feels a small sense of security. This particular line runs through residential areas, making it harder for someone to stage a major incident without being noticed. The conversation turns to the news about the mansion incident. Miyoshi casually reveals that she was the one who personally edited the public footage, carefully cutting out any frames that showed their faces. The forums are already buzzing with theories. He's on edge, though. He refused the JDA's security detail, knowing that having them around would just complicate things. He's expecting an attack from either his father or the Tanaka group, and he needs to be able to move freely. He chose the above-ground Sobu line for a reason. In a subway, an explosion would mean certain death, trapped with no escape. Unseen by them, another pair of agents, Simon and his partner, are also on the move. They've spotted the enemy agents tailing their targets, noting how conspicuous the foreigners look in their suits. On the train, our hero's sharp eyes pick them out immediately. 4 foreigners, trying to blend in but failing miserably. They don't look like tourists. They move with purpose, boarding at the last possible second. He confirms his suspicion to Miyoshi, explaining that he'd already scouted the entire train route using Street View. He knows exactly where they're planning to strike, that blind spot near Sotobori Park. He realizes his own backup isn't around. They're on their own for this one. The agents on the train realize they've been made. In the crowded car, a direct move is impossible. Their leader makes a call. They'll all gather in one car to prepare for an ambush at the next station. Our hero sees their play instantly. They're going to trap the entire train car. He springs into action, giving Miyoshi a lightning-fast set of instructions for their escape. She's worried about her stamina, but there's no time to argue. The second the train doors slide open, they're gone. Miyoshi struggles to keep pace. So he grabs his bag from her, and without breaking stride, sweeps her into his arms. "Is this how you carry a princess?" he quips as they race into an underpass. "Quiet, or you'll bite your tongue." He explains his logic on the run. His life detection skill is useless in a dense crowd, so he needs to get them somewhere isolated. They reach their destination, a 3-meter-high stone wall topped with a fence. Without a moment's hesitation, he leaps, clearing the entire obstacle in a single bound while still carrying Miyoshi. She's breathless, asking if he's some kind of action star. He just shrugs it off and lays out the next phase of the plan: escape through Shinjuku Jouen Park. The main gate is too far, and they'll be targeted if they stay out in the open. He spots a potential entry point near the Okido Gate, but their plan hits a snag. The area is flooded with tourists here to see the maple trees. Suddenly, his danger sense flares up. Someone is following them, but from the other side of the area. Miyoshi confirms that his shadow familiars are keeping watch. He smirks. The shadows are bulletproof. If it comes to a firefight, they have an ace up their sleeve. Just then, Miyoshi's own detection skill pings. A sharp crack echoes through the park. A gunshot. Firing a weapon in a crowd this dense is pure insanity. They need to get out now, but the exit is just as packed. blocked by a crowd for an orchid exhibition. His senses tell him the shooter is outside the garden, waiting. They have no choice but to push through the gate. Miyoshi works her magic, charming the gate guard with a story about losing their tickets, and just like that, they're out. A few minutes later, the Russian agents finally arrive at the now empty station platform. They burst out, realizing their targets are gone. Recalling the map from their briefing, they correctly deduce their targets fled south of Jiwon Park. They follow the path our hero took, stopping at the wall he jumped. The leader calmly assesses the 3-meter jump, confident his team can make it. These aren't just thugs, they're highly trained operatives. With a running start, they too leap over the massive fence. They land right into a trap. Simon's team is waiting for them, guns already drawn. A silent command is given: don't kill the leader. The fight is over before it begins. Simon and his partner move like blurs, disarming and neutralizing the entire Russian squad with brutal efficiency. The female agent examines their weapons. They're fakes, likely props to create a disturbance. They've been completely outplayed. They piece it together. This team was just a distraction. Another team must have been pursuing the real targets. The leader, Josh, is completely baffled. The target didn't even react to the gunshot. For a moment he wonders if they've been chasing a complete nobody this entire time. Having successfully evaded all their pursuers, our hero and Miyoshi finally make it to the street. He's still cautious, insisting they flag down a moving taxi instead of taking one from the stand, just in case it's a setup. As they get in the cab, heading for JDA headquarters, Miyoshi finally lets out a deep breath. For now, they're safe. The operation begins with professional calm. From inside their vehicle, a pair of agents monitor their targets. The man on comms gets an update. Team 1 has made contact. Seeing their targets, a young man and woman, get into a taxi, he decides their direct involvement won't be necessary. But suddenly, the plan shatters. The agent bursts out of the car, barking orders at his partner Roger. "You follow the target. I'll head to the garden and see what's going on." He barely takes a step before he and his colleague Natalie have to leap back to avoid being flattened by a speeding car. The city streets have become a chaotic mess in an instant, and the agent can only curse the escalating situation. The report that comes through the earpiece is chilling. "What?" the man in the command vehicle asks, his voice tight with disbelief. The news from the field is grim. Team 1 has been neutralized, captured. Not killed, but rendered unconscious so efficiently they couldn't even activate their suicide measures. This is unheard of. A highly trained team taken down non-lethally in broad daylight. The commander's mind races, processing the new variables. The targets are on the move, and his best team is compromised. The field agent lays out their options, and they are brutal. Rescue is impossible for a lone operative. But elimination, that's on the table. He calmly asks for permission to clean up their captured teammates to prevent any information from leaking. The commander doesn't hesitate. Secrecy is paramount. "If there's a chance, do it," he orders. "I'll leave the timing to you." Miles away, the man pulling the strings receives the news. He reflects on his targets, knowing that losing any of them jeopardizes the mysterious ORB. With his primary teams failing, he makes a call, activating his final, most reliable asset. Meanwhile, inside the taxi, Miyoshi is on edge. His companion senses his tension. "Is something bothering you?" she asks. He can't shake the feeling that they're being herded. Even if they shake their pursuers, he knows the enemy will likely be waiting for them at their destination, the Ministry of Defense. His premonition proves tragically accurate. As they sit in traffic, Miyoshi's eyes widen in horror. A massive truck is bearing down on them, not slowing, not stopping. He shouts her name, Miyoshi. A fraction of a second before the impact, the world explodes into a symphony of screeching metal and shattering glass as the truck T-bones their vehicle, sending it tumbling violently across the pavement. The car is a mangled wreck, spinning out of control. The driver frozen in sheer panic, but Miyoshi's mind is razor sharp. "Don't stop. Keep going," he screams. He summons his familiar, Durtin. An instant later, a massive, ethereal wolf's paw materializes over the driver's foot, slamming the gas pedal to the floor. The driver can only scream as the battered car lurches forward with supernatural force. His companion reacts just as quickly, calling out to her own familiar, Kavas. The spectral wolf appears outside the car, a blur of motion, as it smashes into the pursuing vehicle with devastating force, creating the opening they need to escape the trap. Their mangled taxi rockets pass the wreckage, leaving the ambush behind. Shaken but alive, they look at each other in the backseat. "Did we make it?" the driver stammers. "They did." Miyoshi praises his companion's quick thinking, while she calmly notes they'll need to find a magic crystal to replenish the energy their familiars used. They abandon the ruined car, paying the terrified driver handsomely. The crash has conveniently cleared the road, so they decide to cross and head for their destination on foot, walking towards the imposing government building. But they are not safe. From a window high above, a sniper watches them through his scope, the last trump card now in play. As they walk, they piece it all together. The accident, the pursuers, it's all connected. Information got leaked, Miyoshi says grimly. It's not surprising they'd come up with an idea to kill one of us to keep it hidden. It's a terrifying but logical conclusion. The presence of a trailer on this specific road was no coincidence. The sniper centers the crosshairs on Miyoshi's companion. He squeezes the trigger, a faint smile on his face as the rifle kicks. But instead of an impact, something impossible happens. A small black vortex of energy materializes out of thin air, directly in the bullet's path, swallowing it whole before vanishing. Miyoshi and his friend whip around, startled by the strange distortion in the air. The realization dawns on them in an instant. A sniper, his companion calls out a name. Argalus. The sniper stares through his scope, completely baffled. 100-meter shot, perfectly aligned. A miss is out of the question, yet there isn't a single scratch on his target. He scans the area, wondering where the bullet went, and then he sees it. A colossal, spectral wolf, invisible to the naked eye, is staring directly at him, a faint shimmer of energy dissipating where the bullet was stopped cold. Miyoshi rushes to his friend's side. "You okay?" he asks, his voice trembling slightly. She, on the other hand, is almost giddy with adrenaline. "That's really awesome," she says, a little breathless. Argalus was really confident when they said to leave it to him. She trusts her familiars implicitly. She admits that it felt surreal, like watching a movie, not quite real until she heard the sound of the shot. But hearing Miyoshi confirm it was a real sniper is still a profound shock. The near-death experience solidifies their bond. Miyoshi instinctively puts a protective arm around her as they finally enter the building. A colleague greets them, noticing their unusual closeness. With a weary but genuine smile, Miyoshi looks at his friend, who is finally able to laugh in relief. He says, "A lot of things happened,